Hello everyone, how are you? I am Tercy Summaries, and today, get comfortable because a great story is about to begin. Imagine being one of the most powerful people in the world, but because an organization, you lose everything, being humiliated over and over, degraded so much that they no longer even took you into account. But your ego and your strength made you get up again and again and again, swearing revenge against the bastard who caused you so much suffering. This is the story of Logan, the best berserker in the world. An arrow, and then an explosion. That's how this story begins. With a powerful archer named Artemis, ranked 26th. Alongside Horda, a powerful witch, and Helios, a man in golden armor, ranked 33 and 19 respectively. They used their utmost powers to confront the king of violence. Ranked 12th, unaffiliated with any guild, Loken, who without mutating, finished Helios with a single blow, but had no chance to rest, as an ice mage named Scotty, ranked 17th, attacked him calling him the plague of the game, leaving him half frozen. With 40% vitality, but still overly confident. And with enormous momentum, Loken considered them all like flies, shouting a war cry as he unleashed his power, stunning them all. However, a strong explosion knocked him to the ground, with only 30% vitality left. Then appeared Zeus and Thor, ranked 2nd and 4th, and their guild masters. Loki saw them confidently and didn't hesitate to invite them to fight, but both withdrew gracefully. For the arrival of the imposing Odin, the god of creation, the guild master, and number 1 ranked in the world. The protagonist managed to defend himself, but an ugly skill appeared in him, and he could no longer move. He cursed at how is it so strong. Receiving all the flashes of light, this is the king of violence. Surrounded by warriors and with only 2% vitality, Odin looked at him with pity, like a person who was once at the top ended up so low. So, as a last resort, he offers him to join him to take him back to the top of the game, but Loki sneered and rejected him, promising that he would destroy him soon. And so Odin ended the protagonist, closing his session and waking up in the real world, where he vented his frustration on the floor until he was exhausted. At that moment, they tell us more about the game. The Lord is a hyper-realistic virtual reality game, with a huge world and realistic NPCs, mentioning that Loki used to be the strongest in the world. He was the first in solo combat abilities and the strongest triple S rank user within the Berserker class. Well, until Odin appeared, with his buffed powers, who along with his companions formed the group. Ragnarok, who had already killed him 8 times, and on top of that, he lost levels with each defeat. Logan was frustrated, since while others bragged about their money earned in the game, he gave everything for his lord. But he still didn't give up and decided to enter again to face them. But again, he was skewered by Odin's spears. With this defeat, he ended up losing, even using his pseudonym of King of Violence, while Loki's desperate screams echoed. Odin and his great group left, since now he had no value in that place because, due to so many deaths, he no longer even appeared in the rankings. And so a defeated Loki lay humiliated on the ground, remembering how he lost everything. Ugh, when a final ray annihilated him, and he woke up depressed in real life, where he had to face realistic problems like rent. But when he wakes up, he realizes that something had changed. Not even his connection capsule was there. He didn't know where he was. Then Loki runs to a store where he meets Han Geokial, apparently a friend of Hyung, the protagonist's real name, who assured him they were in 2021, 3 years earlier, to which Loki finds no better option than to run desperately from the store while Gidge looks at him with pity, thinking that his friend was very damaged. After breaking up with his girlfriend, Loken, out of breath, arrives at a street corner. There, he confirms his suspicions. He had traveled back in time, remembering his pathetic way of dying in the game, and realizing that the game, the Lord, had not even been released yet. He concludes that it is a dream or an illusion caused by Odin. So he starts shouting at him in the middle of the street, which ends with him in a police station, from which he leaves, only with a warning and great embarrassment. Still convinced he is in the game, he finds no better idea than to wake himself up with a huge blow against a pole, discovering that the pain was very real, accepting his reality. Then Protagonist goes straight to a gym where he starts hitting a punching bag. The others don't know what martial art he was practicing. They had never seen anything like it, and obviously no one had seen it before. That was his own fighting style, which he had refined. When he was the best in the world, believing that soon martial arts will be used by everyone when the game was released. The Lord knew that players would die frequently to low-level monsters because they lacked bodily control, having always played with keyboard and mouse. However, everything would change, so understanding and mastering one's own body was the most important thing, and he had already accepted that he had returned. 3 years into the past, and the game would be launched in 1 month. That's why he was determined to take revenge on all those bastards. He would make them pay. After a month, he finally returned to the Lord, where they asked his name, and proudly he stated that his name was Loken. And upon entering, he encounters a goblin attack, although it was just a tutorial. Many died in a level 2 goblin attack, but he eliminated it with 1 blow, proclaiming that the King of Violence had returned. Then, Loken achieved a great title right at the start of the game, and his plan to bypass the system of using the RPG method of hunting monsters to level up begins to be explained. Instead, he will go for the most difficult, achieving the hardest achievements, starting in the tutorial where, although he was supposed to only escape the village besieged by goblins, he wouldn't do it, since thanks to information from a former player named Tolkien, he knew the mission hid something more. The goal was not just to escape, but to make a perfect cleanup. So he would use that future strategy to get through that tutorial, while the village is being massacred by goblins. A girl was escaping from some of them, but Loken appeared, finishing off both. The mission now was to take down 25 goblins, whom he must face, 1 by 1, or ambush at precise moments. His current count was 9, but he knows that once few remain, they will regroup with their leader, so he must find a new plan. That's how he arrives at a potion shop. But when he entered, he had to take down 3 goblins, ending up with only 20% health. Luckily, after a health potion, he was as good as new, and at that moment he hears a scream, thinking it should be him, feeling that they were looking for him. And they give the order to kill Loken, but he was waiting for them, while drinking his Plan B, overloading himself with magical potions of dexterity and strength. Already buffed, the goblins were nothing to him, and he starts tearing each one apart 1 by 1. And so the game grants him a new achievement. Natural Fighter, although he doesn't level up. His strength and endurance stats are at level 10, and there were still some goblins left, feeling he had to test his new strength, ripping goblin heads off in seconds. However, he gets overconfident for a moment, being attacked by the level 15 goblin boss, receiving the first hit. But now he dodges the boss's repeated blows, surprised by his power, yet attacking with frenzy. Feeling he had already analyzed his attack pattern, dodging it and landing a deadly blow to the head, although he actually missed since the goblin had read his attack and only lost an ear, managing to capture Loken and violently slam him to the ground, leaving him with only 20% health. The goblin prepared to land his final blow, but Loken dodged it, putting distance between them, realizing he couldn't beat the goblin with his current level and weapons, so he was clear about what he had to do, shouting his next move, a quick strategic retreat, which enraged the goblin, and the protagonist screamed for his life, and so the goblin chased him to a house, the protagonist aching from the game's hyperrealism. He would use option 3, a fire-resistant scroll, which allowed him to withstand fire for 10 minutes, and now he had to bring the goblin, but it arrived before it was invited. Loken asked to talk things over, but it only attacked her. In the end, the protagonist couldn't block its last attack, ending up in critical condition. Desperate, he threw his axe but missed, thinking he shouldn't be so overconfident. The goblin turned, and axe knocked down a beam, while Loken jumped out a window, saying goodbye, flipping the bird, and the goblin chief, unaware, had just sealed his own grave. Loken had completed her strategy, using the environment, although it embarrassed her because she didn't like relying on other strategies to win, swearing revenge again against Odin, and she was awarded achievements for her incredible defeat, gaining 3 new titles. Descendant of David, 17-1, and the title of Nothing is Impossible, as well as Mysterious Chests and Harbread. Her new skills brought new advantages, like getting along with NPCs and having less difficulty, leveling up, increasing her combat stats against stronger opponents. Additionally, Her defense improved, and she still had to open the chests. Then, full of excitement and nostalgia, she arrived at the starting city, Pocket City, where she saw was full of new players, wondering if the Ragnarok group would be there to take revenge, although she remembered that for Odin, to earn his title as King of Creation and form his group of loyal followers. The top-ranked players still had 2 years left, but for now, she wanted to get stronger so that when she saw them again, she could crush them like cockroaches, and luckily an old man with excessive muscles and a flirtatious look offered to train her in his field. Loken accepted, and the flirtatious old man also liked the protagonist, who gave him a discount. Now begins the next part of the plan, the training field, where experience points are earned by hitting dummies. However, to level up, he would have to hit them for days, something completely inefficient for all players, since doing missions for NPCs would earn more experience, money, and food. That's why no one lasted more than 2 hours training, because it was useless to them. But Logan's goal was different. While with one hit, he sent a dummy's head flying, he had a clear objective: to raise his strength, endurance, and stamina stats only through that training. Although others called him an attention seeker and went on their missions, he insisted so much until he destroyed all the training dummies, shouting with euphoria, while managing to reach the maximum endurance and strength gained in the training field. And 2 new titles that increased his strength appeared. Thus, he achieved something not gained from missions: strength and dexterity points, believing he should move on to the next stage. But before that, the flirtatious old man in serious mode tells him to follow if he wants to reach a higher plane. In this way, he follows the old man to a secret underground passage he never knew existed. Somewhat excited to find out what it was, but his excitement fades when he sees that this secret training was more dummies. The old man explains that these dummies are not ordinary. They moved exactly like humans. He could even die, since he wasn't even level 10, stating that if he tried, he only had one chance. This motivates the protagonist again, who sees it as an interesting challenge, launching into attack using his fighting style, but barely escaping the others' attacks, recognizing they were much stronger than they appeared. This excites him even more, and happily he goes into battle. And so 5 days passed, and when the room's door opened, a dying dummy crawled out, until Logan finished it off, emerging victorious, reaching level 10, with the stats at the limit, plus a new title, Unbreakable Resolution. This was epic rank excited because in his past, it was much harder to obtain. Now, determined, he moves on to the next stage, the great city of Kato, where he heads to a large castle to look for work as a berserker. After an interesting conversation, he is accepted and thus obtains the title of Berserker, restarting at level 1, but keeping his stats and also receiving a weapon as a gift. The protagonist chose an axe with which he practiced his fighting style, leaving the berserker who hired him amazed. And Logan nods. That was what he needed. Now his first action as a berserker was to go into as much debt as possible to acquire books and learn skills. But after hesitating, he sees a mission and asks the old man if he knew about the Wild Wind. But he had no idea. Then, in his mind, he was pondering the Wild Wind mission, since that skill had never appeared in the previous game. But he also couldn't do that mission yet. For now, he had to set that aside and focus on maxing out his berserker skill. That's why he needed someone to take him to the orc camp, but no one dared, except a level 25 knight, who liked the local money. He sees him and rejects him for considering him just a show-off. The knight feels the blow to his ego and uses detection to recognize his level, a technique considered an aggression. However, Lokan does not react, not even when the knight mocks his level, since he was only level 1. Mocking again, the pro, seeing him so confident, proposes a duel. Whoever won the fight would take 15 silver coins. The knight sees it as a joke, but seeing Lokan's attitude, he gets so angry that he accepts. With the 15 coins officially at stake, the knight challenges him to come closer, treating him like trash and vermin. Meanwhile, a generic group of adventurers passing by listened as a crowd was very focused on the duel. The knight, with the best armor and high-quality weapons, asked if he wasn't going to use any kind of armor. Seeing his expression and calmness, he cursed him for being a stupid arrogant, falling into desperation and attacking. However, his attacks only hit the air, over and over, amazed by his speed. But he thought he was still level 1, yet the Protagonist, with just one punch, destroyed the knight's helmet and then gave a tremendous blow that shattered most of the armor. While everyone watched in astonishment, Loken shouted at him that he was an idiot. He had raised his stats to the limit. His level was 1 because he had updated, but his real stats surpassed level 50, expressing that one should not judge anyone by what they see at first glance. Everyone was surprised, because a level 1 was that strong. Loken felt fine with his new strength, but he still had the transportation problem. However, the generic group from before, made up of a knight, a mage, and a healer, offered to carry him, although the protagonist hesitated at first. Seeing their levels, which were 35 and 32, they were quite good. Also, it was a balanced group, so he decided to accept, warning them that he would not go as a client and would not fight at any time. And so they ventured into the forest, moving very cautiously. Upon learning this, the first obstacle threw a kind of stake and managed to sneak past without alerting anyone. Loken was amazed, as he thought they were inexperienced, but they knew what they were doing. Although the entrance they planned to use was guarded by a guard, they decided to use their silencer plan, carrying out the action in a few seconds, eliminating him without making any noise, leaving Loken inside the orc camp. Although the knight suggested being careful, the protagonist carelessly paid them. The woman did not understand it. He was sure that entering that camp alone was very dangerous. Seeing his statement, they decided to leave, and when he left, the healer wondered why. They left the boy alone. The mage only accepted that this guy wanted to die, maybe because he did not want to play for being weak. However, the knight doubted that he wanted to die. Just by looking at him, he knew he had a plan, but he did not know what it was. Meanwhile, Logan arrived at the center of the orc plaza, with a secret he learned from the future and shouting that he demanded a duel with the strongest. Appealing to the pride of the orcs, their plan was not to level up, but to obtain titles of legendary characters. This surprised the orcs, as they did not know that humans recognized orc honor. This gave Loken the advantage, as he could fight one orc at a time. Although all of Loken's courage faded when he saw that the first to volunteer was the orc chief himself, whom Loken knew was far beyond his power. He had no chance of defeating him. Fortunately, other orcs interrupted, unsure if that human was worthy, asking to fight first, convincing the chief, so his opponent was Kahlo, a rank 4 orc. This made the protagonist's soul come back to him, although now he felt humiliated. How could he have such a mindset? Was he happy to face someone weaker? Starting to snort and distributing his points between strength and dexterity, asking the orc to begin and telling the orc chief that he would die today. This enraged Kahlo, who lunged forward, but his axe was stopped, causing a clash of power. Believing he had underestimated the human, so he resorted to his battle cry, which reduces the opponent's abilities. However, surprise was on Loken's side. Loken remained confident, attacking. Kahlo thought Loken was an arrogant human, attacking him with his axe, but every attack he launched was dodged. He did not understand the situation. Although his technique worked, he still could do nothing, wondering why the human was winning. The protagonist decided to reveal that his attack patterns were simple to predict. Just like all of his kind, the orc's fury increased. But once again his axe was intercepted. Loken jumped into the air, activating his axe skill, stating that thanks to it he would be able to defeat his chief. Axe of Final Judgment, and thus Loken earned a new achievement. His plan seemed to be going excellently. The achievements needed to defeat the chief were ready. Therefore, he was going to level up and increase his stats, but the computer informed him that this time there would be no level up because first he had to complete the warrior's honor mission. This mission was given. In theory, because of the orc, he is forced to seek the warrior's honor until the end, so now he should face the final boss with his initial strength, believing it was all Simbesi's plan. He laughed. He had proposed that the honor of battle must face the consequences. Loken knew he was doomed to lose, believing that even if he died, they would give the old rewards. But again, he reproached himself for how he was thinking about losing. He was the king of violence. Loken, the orc, laughed. He was definitely an amusing human. He accepted to fight him. The protagonist sent a shout to the sky, activating his berserker ability, increasing all his stats for 10 minutes. Overflowing with power and wild euphoria and expression. That is why he would never give up being a berserker. Surprising the boss, annoyed because he was hiding his power, he immediately charges the attack, being blocked by the boss. Noticing that the madness of the berserker state had cleared up a bit, thanks to his new skills, Knowing that this state only lasts 3 minutes, he uses all his speed to perform a series of attacks until one connects, surprising the orcs. Despite this, the boss seems to have not taken any damage. However, Logan's flurry of blows continues, but he is outmatched in strength and endurance, managing to do nothing more than scratches, deciding to make a critical hit. Just as he thinks this, the boss reacts, and with a single blow destroys the protagonist's axe, who barely survives the hit with 30% health and only 80 seconds left of the berserker state. Loken is already on his knees, annoyed for being overconfident, while the orc feels disappointed because all his momentum ended in nothing. This triggers nervous laughter in Loken, who reproaches the boss for not accepting his challenge from the start and waiting for him to get tired. For the boss, these are desperate excuses. The protagonist accepts it, disappointed in himself, but his desire for revenge against Ragnarok lifts him up, and he goes straight to the attack, not bothering to dodge, losing health little by little. The boss sees it as a desperate measure, but Loken shouted at him to shut up. The boss, confident of his victory, massacres. Loken receives a blow that leaves him on the verge of game over. But with so little vitality, he awakens to his new sacred state. Loken laughs as the boss approaches to deliver a finishing shot. At that moment, the skill, Unbreakable Resolution, activates, giving him a 50% power-up in all his stats, just before he is about to die. With that new energy, and only 30 seconds of berserker left, Loken resumes his relentless attack. The orc uses a defensive skill that recovers his steel, but it's not enough, since Loken, with one strike, shatters his sword, and with his strike skill lands a bugged hit that ends up annihilating the orc boss, who now disintegrates into digital fragments, humiliated for losing to a human. Loken simply says he kept his word to exterminate him. The orc, smiling, this time recognizes Loken as a worthy warrior, awakening surprise and admiration among the orcs. They praised him so much that he felt embarrassed, but at the same time, his chest swelled with pride as he remembered that the berserker skill was almost over, and before dying in his madness, he drinks a couple of potions. Now he calmly sees his new titles. Orc boss defeated at level 1, which increases his strength and buffs, his critical hits, and the honorary orc title, which makes the orcs like him a lot, helping him avoid being hunted, but also preventing him from gaining experience when hunting them. The Bertano agrees, asking to fight against him, but they are told he is now an honorary orc, which frustrates their plans to level up. But the orc's trust could be useful in the future, as he is sent off from the village by an animated group of orcs. And that's how the protagonist returns to the city, satisfied for leveling up 20 levels. With 2 battles, although frustrated for not finishing off Mazorcos, but he decides to forget about it and take advantage of the time to learn secondary skills. First, he learns how to carve a good cut of meat with the intention of trading the meat and bodies of the beasts he catches to earn income. And then, through reading, he learns first aid, intending to save money on potions for minor wounds. Finishing his route with a visit to the blacksmith to repair his new orc weapon. And now the new main mission of the game begins. It will start in the city sewers, a place with an unpleasant smell, where everyone wants to leave quickly, but he must hunt the largest number of rats to earn the reward, a very miserable quest. After his great battles, but necessary, as it is one of the 10 mandatory missions, to advance in the main story. So, instead of complaining, he decides to finish quickly. Luckily, the giant mutant rats begin to appear, although they're not difficult for him to exterminate. However, this does not remove his disgust for them, just as an army appears, which excites the local, who begins exterminating them one after another, until he has made 200 kills, earning the title of Rat Hunter. Although this is not the real objective, but something else, something that infects the rodents, and right there, the area boss appears, a giant level 25 rat that spreads the plague, which growled fiercely, but Loken only cared about its disgusting appearance, preferring to speed up the extermination, although he is surprised by the boss's tail, and manages to dodge multiple attacks until he gets tired, and with one move cuts off the tail, making the rat squeal. Crazy, it will not spare his neck, but before that a cloud of poison comes out of the rat. He takes a deep breath and uses his war cry to disperse it and reduce the boss's stats, using his axe as a fan. He manages to evade part of the poison and get close to the rat, marking the pivot point as the spot for his critical hit. Despite the strength of the blow, the giant rat has an advanced healing factor, which motivates the protagonist again, inviting him to fight. The rat obeys, and lunges at him with an attack that he easily dodges using his strike skill. He planned to finish everything. However, the rat was very resilient, which puts a smile on Loken, who continues with his relentless attack, which ends with a proud victory over the rat's head, which, despite having no body, insists on attacking, to which the protagonist chooses to crush it, receiving the announcement of level up, and, as a reward, he is now immune to poison. Although his goal is not yet complete, he now uses his butcher skill to make rat meat until he finds the plague jewel, which causes his vitality to drop sharply every 10 seconds until he is healed, something that does not surprise Loken, since he had seen it in the future. Still, he quickens his pace toward the city. First, he takes the rat tails to claim his reward. There, he tries to sell the jewel, cursed as it is, but the knight, seeing it so infected, prefers to send it to Sir Styrin for healing. This annoys him because, besides dying, he is now on a mission and reluctantly accepts. Luckily, the knight is kind and gives him some healing potions and suggests a bath. Loken walks through the city, leaving his pungent smell, arriving at a large tower of the Mage Guild. This bothers him because berserkers don't have nice castles, but his complaints fade because he almost went to the lobby due to the plague. So he enters and meets an old sorcerer, who suggests he take a bath. Annoyed, Loken shows him he came to leave the jewel, to which the mage immediately asks for it. However, he doubts him, and despite being near death, decides not to give it unless he proves he is Sir Styrin, threatening him with his axe. So Loken attacks to prove if he is the first level mage he claims to be. But before he lands a hit, the mage stops him, revealing himself as an illusion to test novice mages, surprised that a berserker noticed the trick, although Loken really just followed Tolkien's tutorial instructions, even though he actually thought the real mage was a little bird in the corner. This earns him a new achievement, the one who sees through lies, which makes him resistant to illusions, and allows him to summon a little bell that serves as a lie detector. History suggests he give the jewel if he wants to live, but Loken prefers to play with his new toy first and summons the bell to confirm if this time it was the mage. Once confirmed, he gives the jewel, and the mage gives him a healing potion, leaving him as good as new while the mage examines the jewel, delivered by asking Loken for information about where he found it. He tells him that it mutated the rats and is lethal to humans. With this, Styrin realizes that his objective was not to create mutant rats, nor to infect humans. Styrin's deduction skills surprise Loken, who knows he is right, since that is exactly the first mission of the main story, a plague that a mysterious group spread from the sewers throughout the city, forcing players to complete 10 hellish chain missions to find a cure. Although now that he discovered it earlier, he assumes he saved himself from the missions. Meanwhile, the mage will take the information to the captain of the guard and asks the protagonist to return in 2 days. Seeing this as a new mission, the mage leaves and Loken is left not knowing what to do, since theoretically the game has now changed. Just as he leaves the tower, an announcement in the sky indicates that the first part of the main story was completed by a player and is canceled for now, making only him able to access that mission. His plan now is to keep leveling up in the coming days. So he goes to a very gloomy place, a cemetery where there really is nothing, unless you know the secrets of the future. So after a search, he finds a peg leg. It indicates that he should take it to its owner, the cemetery caretaker. However, if he does, he will only hear the old man kick him out, but thanks to the guides he knows what to do, since the leg is a key to open a tomb. That leads him to a dungeon, thus obtaining the title of Seeker. It improves his vision and night vision, besides indicating valuable objects with a light mark, which will help him find treasures. Now he enters the dungeon, where his first concern is the virtual ghosts, but none appear. Only a giant skeleton, which he easily eliminates, but many more appeared, which are destroyed by Loken as they rose. Although he considered them annoying, he prefers them over the rats. And to speed up the process, he decides to go all out. His stats to finish off all the enemies and reach level 30, and thus his passage through the dungeon continue by defeating hundreds of skeletons, which start to become boring. But at least until the dungeon boss appears, who attacks him, but Loken, with a couple of moves, breaks him into pieces, reaching level 30. Happy to stop crushing resurrecting skeletons, he finally sees his rewards, a lot of money, and, as a bonus, he takes many skeleton armor outfits, which are highly valued among players. So he will have a very good profit, which, as a visionary of the future, He will reinvest in the safest options. He also plans to sell the dungeon location to some guild, and thus he returns to the main story, going back to the elder, who apologized for leaving him so quickly last time, which made him ask if they really found the culprits. But they had no progress, which was logical, since finding the culprits is one of the main missions of the game. Although he could investigate, the mage first shows him a green jewel called Earth Memories, which they plan to investigate. But first, Storian loves it. He loaded something onto the protagonist, but he knows he must complete the mission, so he must look for warrior blood, orc blood, and wild warrior blood. This will be complicated due to his trust title with the orcs, since hunting them is not an option and asking for it even less. Still, he quickly goes to the orc camp, where they easily identify him and welcome him joyfully. Loken tries to ask for something, politely like a donation, but for the orcs this is dishonorable, since they can only shed blood in battle. Loken does not care about that, so he gets furious. With no options, he changes his plan, and only asks to borrow an axe from an orc, then leaves with a sadistic smile. Facing the village's cheerful farewell, Loken laments having to protect his honor, but his plan is underway, so he goes to the wild village, where he throws the borrowed axe. The wild man angrily dodges it, but Loken easily finishes him off, taking his blood and leaving his body to be found. Alongside an orc axe, the protagonist explains that the savages are beings with semi-human strength and appearance who have disputes in the forest with the orcs. So, he will try to bring forward a future war between the two tribes. The next step is to return to the orc village and throw the savage's sword. This scares the orcs, who see it as an attack. The protagonist arrives just after to further ignite the flame of war, suggesting a frontal attack, a fight he will gladly join. In this way, the new orc chief arrives to raise his sword and lead the orcs to war, which draws an evil smile on Loken's face. So the orcs march through the forest, thirsty for blood. Some humans see them from a distance, scared by the orcs' rage, debating whether to run or hide when they see in the distance Loken marching with the orcs. There we clearly see that one of the humans is the knight, whom Loken taught manners. So, afraid, he decides it's better to escape as fast as possible. But behind him an orc appears, and a commotion breaks out. Loken notices them and sees that is the knight he defeated before, and his companion completely beaten on the ground. The knight begs the protagonist to save him. However, another ogre breaks his nose with a punch. Annoyed that one of his own was touched, Loken fakes an evil smile the man didn't remember, and lets the orcs take care of him. Desperate, he tries to fight back, but it seems useless. Now we move on to the war against the savages, which begins with fierce battles. The orcs advance with a mission to wipe out all the savages until none remain, while Loken passes through the battlefield without fighting, collecting blood from the wounded orcs, recognizing that he really angered them a lot, although he knows well that he caused it, which makes him happy and prepares to take advantage of the fight. So, with a war cry, he affects several savages who, surprised by his power, decide to attack him. However, Loken swiftly passes through them, cutting them down with his axe while calling out to the savage chief. With a smile and thirst for blood, he remembers that he caused this war. Not only for the orcs' blood, since he was able to get it by pretending to be a savage, but he did all that really because he wanted their chief, given that it was difficult to reach him. And that's why he used the honorable orcs to have a chance for a one-on-one, searching for him all over the battlefield. And finally, he finds him at a distance. Loken prepares himself, while the chiefs of both tribes are fighting, although the savage chief has a clear advantage, and he prepares to finish him. However, a flying axe interrupts him, killing the other chief. This only excites the savage, while Loken positions himself for a strike using Striker. The chief can only block the impact, but the blow sends him flying, badly injured, crashing brutally against a wall and losing an arm. Although Loken feels he failed because he wanted to cut off both, the chief is surrounded by all the orcs, who have finished off all his subordinates, leaving only him. Although furious, he tries to attack, but Loken delivers a final blow, feeling triumphant and thus earning a new title by defeating the two chiefs of the Forest Conqueror of the Woods, which increases his strength and dexterity, but also makes it so that when he is in the forest, his stats increase even more. While the orcs roar, celebrating their victory, Loken sees the other title, the Black Veil, which increases his intelligence and grants him a new skill. Identity disguise. Although he is surprised that they count the kill of the orc chief as well, because the orcs were supposed to be his allies. So he does not rule them out as enemies. Meanwhile, they just decide to finish off the other savages who are still alive and return home. Loken felt like they were having a lot of fun, but he had to return to the old man. Back at the tower, Storian is surprised because he completed the mission so quickly, thus earning the title First Apprentice of Storian, which increases his stats. Now, he has a new mission from Storian, which is to take the improved antidote to Moderian in a new city called Trinsic. Then Loken finally goes out into the real world, complaining about the time limit, which is 5 hours per gaming session. He will use this time to check his social media, especially the post about the sale of dungeon information. This post has a lot of hate. Many think it is fake. Fortunately, a YouTuber gamer, a video game magazine dedicated to investigating more hidden girls called Raw, gives it the thumbs up as possibly real. This prevents him from being labeled a liar and receiving many purchase offers. However, with his future information, Logan is clear about who he will bet on. The option is the MP Guild, or ways to play a guild that trains novices and punishes players who like to kill others. This has earned them a reputation for kindness, contacting their leader, scheduling a meeting. However, Logan has the strange feeling that everything is going too well and wonders if he should do things faster to be ready to face his future traumas, although in the end he decides to proceed calmly. Going out to the real world for supplies, he walks down a very lonely street because everyone was playing the man when he sees a couple nearby. The girl recognizes him immediately, but Logan takes a while to realize it is Lim Soji, his ex-girlfriend, who cheated on him and then dumped him. The protagonist had forgotten her because more than 3 years had passed. Although for her, it had only been 4 months, and quickly notices the guy next to her, thinking he is the new one, assuming he is also a player, because that is how her ex prefers them. This annoys him. His ex suggests that her boyfriend could help him in the game if he asks. Logan confronts him, asking for his alias, which he says is Philip. Having never heard it before, he assumes he is very bad, so he leaves confidently, offering help in the game in the future for them, leaving the couple annoyed by his arrogance. Back in the game, he goes to a meeting at the cemetery, where the buyer is waiting. Logan takes advantage of the opportunity to use his new identity disguise technique that allows him change appearance for 1 hour. That's where the negotiation begins, with the knight asking to see the dungeon, but the protagonist requests in advance and lets him scan him to build trust. And so they hand over the money, and he shows them the dungeon's mechanism, before leaving feeling like a millionaire, although he feels a little bad for having heavily squeezed the guild's future. They could have even used real money. Though this lessens its importance, determined to continue his mission and go to Trinsic. However, to get there he must travel an incredibly realistic path, which takes him a long time walking, almost exhausting him, but he was glad to be close. Still, he doesn't get complacent, because if he got a game over, he would return to the previous city, and right there appeared 3 PK guild players, blood hunters, whose red eyes show they have taken down players before. They offer a friendly chat. Loken was willing to listen, but by chat they meant a good fight. The raiders saw Loken very happy about this, calling him crazy. However, he proposes a deal. If they give him a piece of their gear, he will let them go exactly the same way they operate, eliminating players to keep the items they can't obtain. They shout at him that he's a presumptuous lunatic, because if he loses, he'll have to make the journey again, but Loken was truly happy that the negotiation failed, although he never intended to negotiate. The raiders attack, with the mastodon going first, but it was dodged, and Loken launches himself full force against him, but he was stopped by the shield technique of the smaller raider. This leaves him exposed and off balance, barely dodging their attacks, until the archer unleashes a rain of arrows, which he tries to dodge, but many end up hitting his body. Loken stops to analyze their attack, which can't be from a distance or up close due to the skills they face and the teamwork experience of his opponents. So he changes strategy by launching his other weapons, 2 flying axes, which force the squire to retreat, who asks the mastodon to attack Logan. He waits to deliver a direct blow to the abdomen, and then smash him with his axe. And now he goes after the archer, who tries to react, attacking. Logan ends up easily catching his arrows, and closes the distance, telling him that if he wanted to attack, he should have done it. While he was still playing with the mastodon, destroying his bow. But the archer pulls out a knife to continue, to which Logan responds by holding and ripping off his arm, proud of the realistic pain that could be felt in the game. The shield raider tries to use it to knock him down with a push, but Logan stops him with just one hand, confident that he only failed earlier because of his reflection effect, but they would never beat him. The strength and personality of the protagonist terrify the squire, who ends up trembling and calling him a monster, to which Logan does not accept the title, since he is not one, because they were very weak. Then, he sends him a game over. Meanwhile, behind the archer, he tries to escape at full speed. However, Logan sees him, but since he does not want to get any more tired, he decides to save time. The archer was confident because no one was following him anymore. But the rock makes a loud crash as it falls, making Logan very happy, ecstatic about how fun the fights against users were, and then to receive his reward, experience points and many items. Although Logan thought he would have avoided all that if they had listened and left. And this was directed at a raider hiding behind the trees. The raider comes out scared because of the threats and asks Logan whose he was, although he knows he will not recognize it by name. He also notices that the raider does not have the red eyes of his companions. So Logan decides not to do anything to him, since he must be very weak. But he uses the scanning skill to discover Logan's name and level, surprising himself, because someone with level 35. He beat his level 40 companions, believing he should be a hacker. But this annoys Logan, who finishes him off with a single blow to continue his journey to the city, which seems to be more crowded than he thought, being a city only for level 40 players, understanding the popularity the game currently had. And so, he finally arrives at the Mages Guild. Immediately, he goes to a magical items shop, where he quickly requests a rune book that will allow him to teleport to 5 locations. It costs 5 gold coins, a fortune in that world, so he assumes the previous looters had a lot of money, since each of them had one. Then he goes to an NPC named Moderian, to whom he gives the antidote against the plague, who, upon seeing the protagonist, doesn't trust him much, so he assigns him a test task to collect which elixir in the forest. The protagonist cannot refuse the quest, since it is the main story, but knowing that Moderian is a malicious NPC who sends him to do multiple tasks for use in different experiments, except the main one. That's why he decides to skip the search by using his money to buy everything at the item auction and quickly returns to Moderian with a bag full of ingredients, many of which Moderian needed but hadn't requested. In this way, Logan earns Materian's respect, who gives him a bonus, and then a more complicated mission to obtain the blood and heart of a forest lizard man, something that surprises Logan, since this item couldn't be bought at any auction and could only be acquired by defeating the level 80 lizard boss, something he still couldn't do, so he prefers to do the city's side quests. So the first one he will do is to follow the guide of a player who will be labeled crazy in the future, who found a clue hidden in the city fountain, right where a statue pointed toward the dungeon's location. Following the instructions and reaching the spot, however, he found nothing. Luckily, thanks to his seeker title, the skill marks an object with a light, hidden being the one who opens the dungeon door, thus beginning his new path. However, it is different from what he had heard, since he only kept going up and down, feeling that perhaps the user who shared the information was fake to hide the real dungeon. But before going any further, he begins his first mission, the level 1 test, which starts with a giant rock right in front of him. It begins to roll towards him to crush him. Logan, surprised and with no chance to escape, will have to stop it with his hands, raising his stats to the maximum. However, the rock drags him for a long time, until he manages to stop it, ending up completely exhausted, losing a lot of life. His journey was not over, since the only path was upwards, so he must push the rock uphill. Along the way, he complains about the stupid test, until he finally reaches the end, where his speech changes completely, saying it was easy. Now, his second test begins, the wisdom test, so Logan does not get overconfident and throws a stone down the hallway, which ends up receiving multiple arrows. He immediately understands that the test consists of using his brain to know where to step, without triggering a trap. But this is not his strong suit, so activating Berserker mode, he rushes through the hallway. However, the further he goes, the arrows start to increase. So he uses the dash skill, which also doesn't seem enough. He keeps taking damage, having to block the arrows with his axe until he reaches the end, thus passing the test, but with many arrows stuck in his body. And on the verge of game over, so he must heal to move on to test 3, the temptation test, in which the dungeon will show him great temptations, like fiery models, lots of treasures, or a buffet of delicacies. Temptations he eagerly awaits, but his unbreakable resolution skill cancels any psychological effect, and he automatically passes to the next level. So now, disappointed, he continues his path across the bridge, but on the other side he stops and uses his bell of the truth to recognize if it is the right path, and the surprising answer is no, confirming his suspicions that the user who discovered the dungeon lied about some things. He begins to search for a secret corridor, which he finds, falling embarrassingly inside, discovering a sparkling lion helmet of magic and unlocking a new quest, the Ceiling of the Lion King, where he must search for the Lion King's armor, of which he now just has the helmet. This grants greater strength and resistance, besides increasing the effects of the war. Roar, assuming that with the complete armor, he could level up by 100 or 150 levels in combat, but he has no clues to find the other pieces. Luckily, the helmet already serves as a radar for the other pieces. With this completed, Loken is transported out of the dungeon, right to the village fountain where the statue was, and it explodes, surprising everyone except Loken, who watches his next mission, Love Messenger, seeing this as the first of the easy missions he must solve, and so after 2 days, and delivering love letters to lovey-dovey couples, his mission was finished. The good thing was that he leveled up and increased his stats, and also found the Emerald Tear Necklace, which increases the effects of healing and will help counteract the Berserker effect. And Loken, here's how more and more people level up, despite PK users making it difficult. So he must also keep leveling up faster, just as an update is marked in the sky, enabling guild creation and home acquisition. This sparks the protagonist's interest, who notes that a guild creation stone costs 50 gold coins, which is 200,000 won in the real world, so he assumes that guilds like the NPC ones will start to form. But what catches his attention most is the housing update, in which he can buy a small house or a little plot of land, so he hurries to go to a vendor. Making sure no one is there, he quickly takes advantage that no one is interested in using 65 gold to rent all the houses, with 3 bedrooms and 2 floors in the area, and monopolize the housing sector before inflation drives prices up due to supply and demand. Using almost all his money, ecstatic, he thinks about doubling or tripling the price to recover his investment, since he will take advantage of the guilds that need a house to shelter their stone and their group. Although for now, the closest thing is to go hunting, arriving at the lizard's habitat, which is emptier than he remembers, since the lizard chief is still around. Once inside, he decides to start using his war cry that alerts the lizards, which go on the attack. 2 of them attack the protagonist, but he easily destroys them, one by one, and another appears, but he also repels it, using a move he still doesn't fully master, intending not to finish it off in one blow, but first thinking about cutting off its tail, which he considers a delicacy. In that world, and with it, he will negotiate to recover some money. Loken, very confident, gauges the distance to many lurking lizards, so he invites them to fight. In the end, only the protagonist remains holding one by the neck. However, his attention now focuses on the appearance of a whole guild that had been watching him while he fought, waiting to attack him when he got tired. Thus, 5 players corner him. What they had counted on, he turns to look at them, but when he looks into the eyes of their leader, it awakens a fury that terrifies the others, scaring the entire guild. Their leader calms them, expressing that it was only one, and he was going to finish him without reinforcements. And Loken, with a mix of satisfaction and fury, because he recognizes the guild leader as a future henchman of Helios, shouts that he will kill him, promising a beating to Helios and his group. Although while watching them, he notices they have the same mark as the raiders he defeated before. Thus, the guild sins as blood hunters once again. He sees them all and mocks that they had to bring so many reinforcements for just one player, to which Helios responds that to do something, you must make sure to do it well, especially against those who interfere in his business. The protagonist didn't care about the raids, but he would end with anyone who dared to threaten him. The guild, furious at his arrogance, launches an attack. He grew tired of waiting, until with his superhuman speed and in an extremely violent way, he ends up leaving parts of his enemies all over the battlefield and also attacks Helios, who, surprised and confident, blocks Logan's strike. However, he admires his strength and criticizes his companions for being weak, scolding Locan for using a simple war axe, and with one move sends him flying with a burst of fire. The magical fire swordsman feels proud, thinking he finished the fight. But from the smoke, Locan emerges with fury. Helios barely manages to block and, stunned by the protagonist's strength, increases his explosion, pushing Locan back, who started to get injured. He mocks him for being a mediocre swordsman with both magic and sword. Helios, furious, goes on the attack, but Locan manages to dodge and humiliate him, as he perfectly remembers his fighting style from the future. This enrages Helios even more, who prepares his intermediate-level technique, which manifests as a gigantic cloud of fire above his head, preparing for incineration. This surprises Logan, and Helios, completely furious, unleashes the attack, causing a massive explosion. Confident that not even ashes will remain, everything seems to be over. However, Locan returns with the lion armor mask, leaving Helios with no options, who is exterminated with a single blow that shakes the earth. And that's how the protagonist stands up, leveling up, although admitting he almost died. If not for the lion helmet. After the big scare, he is surprised by all the rewards he receives after the victory, understanding how there were users so advanced in their past lives who prevented others. They would rank up, so several lower-level players joined forces to stop them, mainly from a guild. Ways of playing. However, in this new timeline, thanks to Locan, the MP Guild is in financial trouble, and therefore will not be able to defeat the PKs before they grow stronger. So he wonders if it would be a good idea to go hunt them. But then, a huge star-like light appears behind him, and more warriors arrive. He doesn't hesitate for a second and slams one to the ground, asking if they are reinforcements from the previous group, inviting them to fight. However, he quickly reduces the number of opponents from 15 to 9. Cornered, all the archers launch a guided shot, which has a 100% chance to hit. However, to the protagonist, it was nothing, terrifying the players. This is how the counterattack begins. Using his speed, they, agonizing, accuse him of using hacks. The protagonist just mocks how pathetic they are and prefers to collect his loot. Surprised that among all this he finds a mysterious item, the stealth cloak, which allows him to become invisible and is a rare and hard-to-get item to risk in battle, although he appreciates what they did just as more reinforcements arrive. And it was the perfect moment to test the cloak, which worked perfectly. From a distance, he sees two new subjects appear. He hears them talk, accusing the protagonist of using hacks since he survived techniques that were too powerful. Locan is not worried, although they discovered his user because they managed to scan him, and that's why the protagonist is more interested in distinguishing the logo on their clothes. That should be the leader, who is upset, because although they report the protagonist for hacks, if they don't defeat him, the hunters will show weakness, so they must look for the stealth cloak, which was brought there for a girl. Locan assumes she is the girlfriend of the hunter's leader, but assumes she will now be his ex if they lose that cloak. After many attempts, Locan recognizes the Knight's logo as the MP Guild, which are supposed to be in the original timeline. They were the ones who faced and defeated the Blood Hunters, assuming it might have just been a setup to appear as heroes. He also assumes that they are the ones who, in the future, sell their information. So now, he is determined to take revenge, although first he must improve his stats. So Locan returns to battles against the lizards, until he earns the Endless Challenge title after defeating 100 superior opponents. He managed it the first time, though it took a long time, and now the second job is also unlocked. Using the rune, he transports himself to the city where he seeks to start his second job, but as soon as he appears in the city, he is surrounded by many members of the hunters. There, the man who accompanied the MP leader appears to offer Locan a deal. Locan is not interested in listening and, raising his voice, uses a war cry to call the NPC guards, who quickly surround the hunters, ready to hunt the PKs who are not welcome in that city. The main hunter gets angry and lunges at Locan, who knocks him out with a single blow and then lets the guards take over. It's just a statement saying that if they want their items back, they will be at the auction. And so all the items We're at the auction at an inflated price, and Logan decides to check his networks, where he sees how guilds from other cities already have houses and show them off to attract more members. Although in his city, there aren't many guilds since he had monopolized most of the houses, so the time had come to start selling the real estate. So he posts an announcement. At first, they thought it was a scam, and indeed it was, but by using the fake profile with which he sold the dungeon, many interested parties arrived, including the MPs and the hunters. Still, he prefers not to rush and waits a week. His next move is to go to the Berserker Guild to request the job again. Although this time the person in charge is a visionary in life, who tells him to think it over carefully, but Loka just wants the papers. The manager does not give up, and in a poetic way explains that, although his skills will improve, he will lose the chance to learn new skills in his second job, even though the protagonist knows all that, as well as that there are hidden jobs with certain conditions or locations. It really does not matter what he chooses. There will always be advantages and disadvantages. So he insists again on asking for the papers, and in the end they give them to him, welcoming him as a berserker, where they will give him a new gift item. But there are no axes like he likes, so he prefers something more aesthetic and defensive, a leather shoulder pad for men. Lizard. The manager thought it was strange, since everyone only carried weapons. However, the protagonist knew he needed defense. His next move is to learn more skills. But because he was being reckless, he ran out of money, so he does the most logical thing. Go into debt again, where he asks again for the maximum amount. Although his face and guild end up scaring the NPC cashier, who, still afraid, gives him the lone gold. Back at the guild, the protagonist enhances his skills from dash to strike. He also learns a new one like shoulder charge, a powerful takedown, blade attack, and jump with mega strike on the descent. And of course, the last move he learned from the orc chief. There are not many skills, but Loka prefers them, this being the disadvantage of sticking to a single career where only a few exceptional ones stand out, like the mage Ares or the fast light speed, although there are others whose job combinations are unknown, like the king of creation Odin. Then the protagonist returns to the mage guild and gives the lizard blood to Materian, who doesn't even look him in the eyes, assigning him a new mission. The protagonist, tired, knows he only has 4 left to finish the mission, so now he goes with a new task, the forest monster fruit. That is how he arrives at the swamp. Then he went to the lizard habitat, where more hunters appeared. They tried to negotiate for him to return the stealth cloak, in exchange for leaving him alone. This only made Logan burst out laughing, since it was not a deal that interested him, and he told them it was more interesting if they tried to snatch the cloak from him. When the hunters managed to intercept Logan, more reinforcements appeared. The protagonist took out his lion helmet to use his enhanced war cry, weakening them all, and then using his speed to attack the person accompanying the NPC leader. He was there, watching in disbelief the destruction that someone could cause, who was supposed to be only level 35 and had advanced 15 levels in just 2 days. While Logan continued his massacre, even finishing off those who surrendered and wiping out everything, the leader, desperate in a dishonorable way, ordered a magical bombardment by all the mages on the battlefield, even if it meant killing their own comrades. However, the protagonist dodged and repelled by throwing rocks to intercept the fireballs, but they shot a bunch of arrows at him. Still, he used the hunters as a shield, but in all that destruction, he had only taken out 20 hunters out of 100, so he had to ration his energy. While reconsidering his plans, squires attacked him using their skills. Although he easily finished them off, he got distracted and was captured by magical chains, which he himself had sold, because he saw no use for them in combat. He saw how everyone started, spamming their fire attacks. Although he remained confident he could defeat them all, the flames approached, ending in a huge explosion. The hunters seemed to have the victory, until from the sky appeared the chains cut by an axe, and there was Logan diving down to split a man in 2, showing off his new skills. With his opponent's terror increasing, the protagonist, excited, attacked them, leveling up, until he finally finished them all, earning the PPK title, which is a very large buff when facing humans, NPCs, or players, and it allows him to finish off his opponents faster, getting excited and believing he wanted to finish off 1,000 more. But for now he must continue on his path, saving that location in his runes and returning to the city, where he returns for another mega equipment auction in which he was winning, thinking that this might have scared the blood hunters. So he takes the opportunity to tell the community they must hunt the player killers and asks for information on their whereabouts. Although he believes they will still follow him as long as he has the cloak. That's why he takes some money to buy expensive magic stones, which give him an advantage to restore up to 2 million. For a safe zone where he cannot be attacked. This will be useful when he is exhausted from the berserker state. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the MP leader is furious, blaming his men for failing. Although his girlfriend, playing dumb, suggests he let it go, but it is a very rare and expensive item that he must recover at any cost. Meanwhile, Loken sees how his PK hunting post begins to attract attention. Some call him crazy, others wish it were real, and others almost take it as real. And when they see several hunter items at auction, he assumes they really are being hunted. With this, the protagonist goes on to his next mission, the swamp, killing a giant tree monster, which he tears apart and recovers a strange amber stone from inside. But no fruit, so with no other option, he decides to start massive deforestation until he finds his target. And sure enough, he keeps destroying trees until he triumphantly finds the forest monster's fruit. With this mission completed, he heads to the next one, at a beautiful lake with very clean and crystal clear water, which has the effect of boosting mental abilities if ingested, which is why many carry it in bottles. Although he is not looking for water, but for monsters, herbs, and fish in the area to obtain the ingredients for Materian's next mission, who is trying to understand the reason behind the lake's strange purification. Although for the protagonist, everything seems very calm, thinking that maybe he's scared the hunters too much last time. But right then voices are heard. So he turns invisible with the cloak and listens to the MP leader, yelling at a subordinate for failing to finish off the protagonist, which was the reason they stopped fearing them, exactly what Logan was looking for. However, his thoughts are interrupted when the subordinate reveals the leader's name, which was Piria, a name that seems to bring back memories for the protagonist, while Piria himself remains furious, asking his subordinate about the hacking report they made. However, the administration denied any hacking, which annoyed the boss, who almost sent Lobby against his own teammate and considered it impossible for someone to defeat 100 players alone, believing it didn't matter if he wasn't a hacker. They had to turn the entire community against him. Although he wasn't busy, he had a revelation remembering that Piria is the new boyfriend of his ex-girlfriend, and she was the one who lost the stealth cloak. This brought back memories of how the gentleman started playing to impress his ex, but she left him and then sent her brothers to exterminate the protagonist over and over again. So he considers this the perfect opportunity to return the humiliation, although Piria continues hunting to learn from his movements until he gets bored and returns to the lake, where he thinks everything is calm until several blue wolves and a blood bear appear, all level 80. Logan will have to face them, although the mission would be completed simply by hunting a little rabbit. The protagonist wanted to fight and draws his axe, tearing everyone to pieces in a second, only needing to collect the loot. Everything was calm, but a mysterious floating knight appears, being the guardian of the lake, who, after dying, promised to protect it, becoming a level 100 monster. Logan knows it would be too risky, since level 100. They also have combined abilities, so he plans to retreat. However, remember that defeating it drops a prize called Lake Essence, which could be exactly what Meteorian is looking for, and although it's risky, he didn't mind. Starting the battle against a powerful guardian, a soaked Locan sees how the Lake Guardian doesn't wait a second to unleash its power and launch a strong attack, stating that those who pollute the lake must apologize with death. Locan doesn't waste any more time. With a huge smile, he activates Berserker mode, telling him that the only one who should apologize was him. And so, the two clash swords, but Locan's weapons take more damage, and he loses health every time they collide. Thanks to the lion helmet, he manages to hold on, but not for long. So, as soon as the Guardian attacks, the protagonist dodges and charges forward with a shoulder tackle. But the Guardian creates an energy barrier in which, if he collides, he loses health, so he stops and jumps to come back with a Mega Axe strike, but it only hits the water. His opponent had turned from liquid to solid again, believing he was definitely strong, even for a level 100, but he wouldn't let him escape next time. Starting to exchange blows again, Locan felt it wasn't easy, even using his Berserker buff. He could be killed at any moment. Also, if this continued, his weapon would be destroyed, so he thought he should end it with a single strike. Deactivating his abilities, the Guardian didn't understand. Was he prepared to die? Seeing him approach, he would end the battle using a water slash. Seeing he was going to use a rookie skill, he was disappointed and used his barrier, but Locan denied it, switching skills and creating an opening in the barrier, hitting it with his shoulder charge. He admitted he had gotten through, but now he had no power left. Locan laughed, reactivating his abilities, merging dash, strike, and armor skills, forming a critical hit. Locan was surprised it worked. He realizes that his titles increase the strength of his critical hits, although his armor ended up shattered. Nothing, but he doesn't have much time to think, since he must finish off the Guardian, level up, and earn the title. Battle Hero and the first named Hunter. But before he can see his achievements, Locan deactivates the Berserker state and sets a safe zone, collapsing to the ground from exhaustion, while the computer indicates that the titles he earned combine, creating a new legendary title, breaking limits which buffs the protagonist tremendously when facing stronger opponents. This leaves him so satisfied that he doesn't care if Madarian rewards him, although he is interrupted again by the hunters, who throw fireballs. Noticing he takes no damage, they decide to record a video and accuse him of hacking again, but Locan pays no attention and collects the lake's essence. This is how the protagonist returns to the village, repairs his basin, places all the items he won on his spear, and heads to the Mage Guild, where he obtains a new enchanted item, a very simple yellow orb, which he will use to get the last ingredient before seeing Madarian, a fish from the lake, so he goes back there to use that small yellow orb, very costly, throwing it into the lake, from which comes a powerful lightning bolt. This way he tries to save himself the hard and patient work of fishing a fish, and with a second lightning bolt, he causes many scorched fish to surface. This is how he brings all the fish and other items to Madarian, who thanks him but still has a new mission. However, he sees Locan as still too small to fulfill it, so he tells him to come back later. Faced with the protagonist's annoyance at not yet obtaining his title, and his desire to hit him, he calms down and decides to give him another item, the lake's essence. This surprises him, and he asks where he got it, to which the protagonist calmly says he defeated the Lake Knight. Madarian is surprised that he is stronger than he seems. With this, the mage finally decides to give him the final mission, the search for death, or rather an object with the power of death, which a member of the hacking research group might know something about. The reward is gold and the title. Research team, as well as a researcher's ring, which can increase performance again and again, allowing the wearer to level up faster. Confidently, he says he will take care of it, to which Madarian agrees. And so the first step is to find out about Joaquin. Searching for his diary at the auction, since looking for it normally is very tiring and can only be done if he gathers the 15 pages of Joaquin's diary, scattered throughout the town. In his first future, it was very difficult to get them, but at that moment, no one knew it was an important item. So by buying them, he manages to get 11 out of 15. Wondering if he should buy the rest to advance in other things like seeing his own routes or exterminating the remaining blood hunters. Just as he checks the posts, he notices that the blood hunters have been roaming the area and are very close to the goblin camp. So, using the stealth cloak, he heads there at full speed, passing like a ghost through the town while in the forest. A group of hunters is threatening a small group of players who, desperate, ask them to stop because they won't let them play. The PKs claim they need to get stronger so they won't be eliminated. For now, they ask for their items. Meanwhile, Locan watches them from afar, seeing how, despite having taken down so many of them, they still lack formation or caution, so he decides to jump straight into combat to literally crush the first one with a single blow, terrifying everyone immediately. Everyone, surprised, decides to flee, but Locan freezes them with his war cry, starting the fight. In the distance, the usual players are surprised that the hunting announcement was real. So now the protagonist has more knowledge, although he only seems focused on taking down more hunters and taking their items. After the first battle, the hunter who earlier threatened the players surrenders to Locan, telling him there's no reason for him to exterminate them. But the protagonist asks if he needed a reason. He repeats the phrase, exterminate. But the protagonist asks if he needed a reason. He repeats the phrase. The hunter used it so sadistically before, you should get stronger so it doesn't happen. Immediately after, he sends him to the lobby. All the players watch him with admiration, and a small, shy girl approaches him to give information about hunters attacking her friend in the Southern Valley. Loken, very excited, thanks her and leaves, claiming he will exterminate them in 5 minutes. With this attitude, he impresses the girl and continues hunting hunters until, a few days later, the PK reports stopped, which annoys him, since his fun pastime of exterminating hunters had ended, at least for that day. So looking to find out why, he goes to the game blog where he discovers that many players have used Loken's name as a scarecrow against the hunters, and others have stopped fearing them, even organizing house groups, all thanks to Loken's influence. After taking down large groups of hunters alone, although he doesn't enjoy the achievement much, since now it seems the PK chickens had hidden, and so his fun would have ended. That's why he must think of something else to pass the time. Luckily, the property auction event is about to happen, which he could use to lure out the hunters. The next day, in the square where the auction will take place, it fills with many guild leaders. Among them is Piria, who seems intent on being on the Lord's ranking. This will surely be defined according to the wealth and honor of the players in the real world and the game. So he must win the auction at all costs, still annoyed with his girlfriend for losing the cape with which he would have had more money. At that moment, right in the middle of the square, an old man with a mustache appears, very lively and amazed at all those who come to give him their money. This old man is Loken disguised with camouflage, which only works for 1 hour. So he immediately starts the auction, although Piria, suspicious, suggests scanning him to see if he is Krypton, Loken's previous disguise with which he sold the dungeon. But the protagonist, he suggests that if you're suspicious, the best thing is not to buy. And so the auction begins with 12 gold. But it quickly reaches 20. Just as Piria tries to raise it to 22, the protagonist silences him, since he is not participating, and the auction winner was a guild knight, Steel Squad, who, very happy, immediately signs the contract. This causes everyone else to trust him and realize it is not a scam. Now follows the next auction, in which he again leaves out the MP guild, making Piria furious, who thinks about seeking revenge against the old man. Meanwhile, Logan smiles, ready to sink the MP guild, and so they move on to the next auctions, where Piria loses again. Luckily for him, all the big guilds bought their houses, so now he can buy at a lower price. However, Logan notices this and, with an evil look, decides to play one last prank, shouting that the next auction will be the last. Piria sees no other options, and, when the auction starts at 15 gold, the MP leader, without hesitation, offers 40 gold, which is like 8 million WOM in the real world, an excessive amount that badly surprises the players. Loken, happy with the price, gives them the victory, and they sign a contract suggesting they don't fall behind on rent. Piria is very happy to win the last auction, but loses his smile when Loken announces a recess to then auction the biggest house. This enrages him, complaining about being told it was the last one. And indeed, the protagonist confirmed that it was the last 2-bedroom house, leaving Piria with no options or words and withdrawing. Having succeeded, he thinks that the overprice he paid would not please his guild. Meanwhile, Piria was walking down a dark alley when a hand emerges from the shadows to grab him by the neck. It reveals itself and belongs to a skull-masked figure who interrogates him about taking money from his guild for the auction, reminding him they're only allies for benefit, and he could kill him at any moment. Piria decides to hand over the house contract to leave peacefully, although the masked man asks him if they didn't need a house, but the NPC leader says that before anything else, they must take care of Loken and expose his defeat to everyone with a video. The Shadow Skull admits that they also plan to eliminate him. Meanwhile, the protagonist in the real world sees his earnings, which are more than 300 gold, becoming the richest man in the game. So he takes advantage and will raise inflation to sell gold at double the price, and because the guilds will have no money due to the auction, many will fall. With this, the price of items in the auction also increases to maintain the advantage of money power, and he will return to his original plan to hunt more hunters who will surely go out to steal gold. And, right in the forest, a group of hunters fights monsters, while only observing is Tunk Baegi, the hammer giant, the crusher, the executive of the Blood Hunters Guild, and Sharpman, vice master of the new house, when a masked skull interrupts them to tell them that their items had already appeared, heading along with all the executives to crush Loken, while a desperate hunter escapes from the protagonist, who easily dodges his attacks, jumping and having fun with his victim, which leaves the hunter's companions terrified. Although someone shouts at them not to be scared, this was the executive of the Hunters Guild, who states that they're damage-dealing warriors. Keep attacking to hold the line. The protagonist advances, only dodging attacks, noticing that it seems they're only delaying him. Just as a portal opens behind, the hunters rejoice. From the portal, a spear comes out, which Loken barely blocks, surprising Sharpman, and also delighting Tunk Baegi, who sees in Loken a worthy opponent to defeat. And from behind them, Cabal speaks, warning Loken that his fun ends today, which only makes the protagonist burst out laughing, mocking the group of hunters for just running away. While waiting for those three, laughing, he invites them to attack him, to which the leader of the hunters orders a full assault. Loken goes straight to the front, using his entire arsenal, but a gigantic mace appears, from which he barely escapes, surprising Loken with its great strength. Although they don't let him think, and a spear appears, the protagonist understands that clearly. These individuals are the main force of the Blood Hunters, amazed by their power, especially the masked one, who clearly was the leader, although he knows he must first finish off those two. Among his ideas is to use Berserker to take them down, although he doesn't want to risk any surprises, so he launches an attack against the mace, who confidently prepares to finish him off, but at the last moment Loken jumps to prepare his blade slash. The giant realizes that his target is not him but Sharp. Sharp feels confident, since it's easier to aim at a target in the air, throwing his spear, hitting Loken, who was receiving the attack. But that wasn't true, since he managed to dodge the spear with a hip movement, keeping it, although he had gotten quite a scare. So now an incredulous Sharp looks at him amazed because his trajectory correction skill had failed. The protagonist doesn't give him time to think when he returns the spear strike, moving at full speed, but Sharp doesn't even worry about moving because he has a very powerful survival technique, a mage ring, that allows him to teleport once a day, 3 meters backward, thus dodging the attack. Loken smiles and throws his axe at full speed. Now he had no escape, since he had used his ring, so he had no choice but to take the axe. Amid his companions' desperate screams, Loken confidently decides to go after the big guy, who furiously launches himself to attack. Loken knew about his strength, but he was also slow, managing to dodge him easily and attack him. From behind, the giant blocks it, but Loken only sees someone very confident because of his strength. He yells at him, enraged, that he is the strongest in the guild, charging with all his might. Meanwhile, in the distance, the horseman seems to prepare for combat, absorbing the power of shadows returning with Loken. He has the giant by the neck, who is very scared, and Loken, with a smile, decides to finish him by leveling up, while Cabal watches from a distance, which annoys the protagonist, who accuses him of being a terrible leader, just for standing there watching the fight. So now he goes after him, but he stops when he completes his spell, releasing the power of shadows. The masked man says he held back during the entire fight to fight the protagonist at 100%, so while he was finishing everyone off, he was gathering all the shadows in the area, taking control of the terrain. Loken is surprised that he knows a shadow mage, a hidden job in the game very hard to get, due to the search conditions, so much that in his first life he didn't meet anyone who achieved it except maybe one, but he stops thinking about that to look for him and tear him apart, which he will only manage if he finds the main body. In this way, he jumps the attack, the sword defenses, jump to defend, but he pierces through them, splitting the masked man in two, but there is no celebration, since it was simply a shadow-made substitute. Cabal surprises the protagonist by appearing behind him, while telling him that it was very easy to read him, attacking and causing a serious wound that leaves him with half vitality and fills him with sacred paralysis status, a poison that will take away 30% of life every 10 seconds. With this, the masked man becomes confident, looking at Loken with contempt, disappointed because a hacker couldn't do anything else, but Loken happily moves, destroying all the tentacles, stating that now the real show begins, since the poison had disappeared due to his resistance ability. Loken, clear-headed, manages to recognize the hunter as an old acquaintance from the future, whom he calls Nest, the 8th grade. Within Ragnarok, this brings back memories to the protagonist. From the king of creation Odin, who were crazy. But, although he hated to admit it, they were the best players. However, it was always a suspicious group, since suddenly, it was formed from excellent players who ended up leaving their guilds and changing their aliases, which requires a lot of money, all to join Ragnarok, and blindly follow Odin, remembering among them a troublesome warrior, who controlled shadows and poison at the same time, this being Nidhogg, a name that comes from a dragon in Norse mythology, which gnaws at the world tree with its fangs, concluding that he must be him, because it was almost impossible that there were two people with the same abilities, although being so confused. When he mentions Ragnarok, it makes the protagonist believe that Cabal still does not know Odin, but now he must analyze his opponent's situation. Assuming his first job was killer and the second, Shadow Mage, he assumes he has a high level, with agility superior to his. So he does not take risks and planting his feet on the ground. He releases the Berserker state. Cabal just says, I hate that Berserker skill, but he is not worried, since he does not rely on a single skill, so he separates his shadow swords, to which he, the protagonist, with an arrogant smile, does not hesitate and throws himself at him, causing great destruction, while they fight with shadows, reaching such speed that Cabal cannot see him, thus finding an opening for his attack. But it was only a shadow replacement. The masked man warns him that he still does not understand, that the entire area is under his control since having absorbed all the shadows. He is able to sense any movement that Loken makes on the ground and anticipate it. This annoys the protagonist, who sees him as a cartoon villain who reveals his evil plan, but it is because Cabal is confident in his victory, since even if he does not exterminate him, the Berserker penalty will. Loken does not take it well and again goes straight ahead, being met by thousands of shadows, which he can barely fight. Remembering when he faced him in his first future, both were stronger. But his thoughts are interrupted by a line of swords, which he barely manages to dodge, taking heavy damage to his helmet. Loken, almost out of energy, he sees a gigantic shadow dragon approaching him, thinking that this time he won't make it. After the impact, completely injured, unable to stand, and with only 20 seconds of Berserker left, he can only watch as Cabal approaches angrily, because what keeps the protagonist alive is his Berserker buff. But once that ends, it will be his end. He can't allow that, since he will be the example that blood hunters can't be challenged, showing his execution in a video with only 10 seconds of Berserker. Loken, with no other options, he turns to an old friend, the little yellow ball with lightning magic, releasing its last charge, electrocuting Cabal, who receives the lightning confused, so much that he is left defenseless. The protagonist was angry at his desperate measure. He had no time to lose, and with only 5 seconds left, he delivers a blow with such fury that he ends up splitting Cabal in two just as the Berserker effect ends. And he levels up, leaving Cabal complaining about losing to Loken. Exhausted and without spirit, he tells him to go to hell, inviting him to repeat the beating whenever he wants, while Cabal fades away, without finishing his last words, just as Logan falls to the ground. He was about to die, but quickly takes a healing potion, thinking he really almost didn't make it. That bastard was the strongest he had faced. And surprised by his discoveries, like blood hunters joining Ragnarok in the future, the protagonist doesn't feel entirely well, since he knows he only won, because of the title breaking limits and the buff they give him against strong opponents. Although he prefers not to think about that and focus on his loot, the Coward's Ring, very useful to use right in his Berserker state. At that moment, he stops to think if he will meet those two. In this present, something changed in the future, although he really doesn't even know how Ragnarok was founded, nor where Odin is at that time, who surely has another user. After thinking so much about the future, he ends up frustrated and decides to focus on Pyria, who seemed to have planned that entire attack, taking it as a challenge. He is determined to face him, so he must prepare and thus acquires a new arsenal, a hawk armor, yellow gloves, tight lizard man leather pants, a death belt, and iron exploiter boots, all items that increase defense, but especially together add up to 20% critical hits, which combined with his current skill guarantees him 40% critical hits, and by improving his axe, he sees his current earnings, feeling what it is like to be a millionaire. Since he barely spent any gold, he also checks if he can continue the main quest, but he still lacks a page from the diary, so his next destination is to test his purchases, although he notices he is being followed Already on the mountain, he calmly hunts a level 70 boar with one hit. However, when he was about to continue hunting, some arrows intercepted his prey, stealing the kill, which annoys him. But seeing that the archer apologizes, he lets it go, although the same theft happens again. And this time, it was a little mage. Now annoyed, he wanted to create a strategy, but he discovers someone from the MP guild, seeing that he was now clearly surrounded by them. This will be interrupting his hunts, so he decides to threaten them that if they keep stealing his kills, he will take it as an aggression and then leaves. The MP member feels calm, since unlike the Blood Hunters, the MP guild is known for their good manners, so they won't be able to do anything to them. Then, this archer remembers how Piria gave him the order to interfere with the protagonist's hunts. Although he was fearful of his reaction, since they don't consider Loken to be sane, but Piria precisely sought that a minimally violent reaction to record and modify it, since if they can't defeat her by force, they will ruin him through public opinion. He also reassures his subordinate by telling him that the protagonist won't do anything to him because he belongs to a refined guild. With this, he convinces himself to prepare his shot against a boar, which was being chased by Loken. He approaches the archer, who pretends to play dumb again, but enraged, the protagonist tears his head off, stating that the conversation was over. This terrifies the other players, since he just took out a normal player, to which he replies that he had already warned them. The mage from before, frightened, tries to cast a spell, failing and being eliminated with a critical hit. Another player tries to save himself by warning the protagonist that it won't look good if he keeps going like this. But Loken no longer cares, which splits him in two. To his bad luck, the game warns him that he is now a killer player, which means that if he gets a game over, he will lose a lot of experience and items, leaving the option to remove that penalty by taking out other killers. But if his kills increase, the penalty will also increase. The protagonist expected all this, yet he knows how to get rid of that problem by going to the bandits' territory, which can be difficult for anyone except him, although he prefers to keep hunting first. Later, in the real world, he does business over the phone, asking for more modern game capsules. Though resting, he has doubts about why. Nothing has happened yet, thinking that Piria is afraid of him. And that's when he sees a YouTube notification where Piria was exposing him, stating that the one everyone saw as a hero for facing the PKs was just someone who wanted experience and items from other users without penalties. Although that wasn't entirely bad, but it got worse with an anonymous report, which supposedly claims that the protagonist is a hacker with a program that lets him play without restrictions, showing edits where he stops arrows or takes no damage from spells. But the worst part is that the MP members who tried to clarify his use of hacks were exterminated by him before they could speak, so Piria calls for a public condemnation against Loken for using hacks. This seems to shake the protagonist, trembling for not being able to hold back laughter, mocking that Piria could only do that after hiding for so long, and so between laughs he labels him as a jester, not understanding how his ex went with him, although he becomes serious, thinking that in the future it could be a problem, since he knew he couldn't beat him. But for this, Loken was not new and already knows how to deal with these deceptions, so now he will go directly against them, knowing that people will believe a hero instead of a powerful tyrant. This is how now, at the Bandit Guard, they angrily attack Loken for challenging them alone, although he pretends not to know who they are. Then he tells them that they're nothing more than inexperienced rookies. The furious bandits charge forward, although Loken thought they were just a group taken from cartoons. However, they were above level 90. One of them promises to make him dog food, while the protagonist thinks the bandits have gained a lot of strength by robbing and exterminating adventurers, endowing them with great martial arts and weaponry, basically turning them into monsters. They rush to finish him off, but the protagonist calmly activates Berserker, while thinking he has an event planned for Piria after dealing with the bandits. Many messages about his video appear on social media, some doubting, others condemning Loken for being a hacker, some doubting if it's possible, few believing him, and some supporting the lynching of Loken. This greatly pleases Piria, who feels proud to turn public opinion against a lone enemy, thinking he should have started with this, planning to crush the protagonist and then join the Blood Hunters. But all this is interrupted by a call informing that Loken appeared in Cotton, which makes Piria happy and sends the vultures to provoke the lynching. However, there seems to be a problem with their plans. While the protagonist strolls through the city, a pair of players see him, pass by. The girl looks at him annoyed and goes after him, although her companion doesn't want to let her. The girl promises she will only confront him to call the NPC guards and have them deal with him. The girl follows him and confronts him, but when the protagonist sees her, he had light-colored eyes. She thought it was impossible, because no one could reduce their kill count that fast, according to the protagonist. This disappears after weeks or by finishing off other PKs. But it is still unknown what exactly can be reduced. Defeating high-level monsters or a large number of kills, so defeating strong creatures and bandits allowed him to do it easily. Something that will be known in the future and that, for now, will help him get out of trouble, since the couple no longer tries anything. Loken decides to leave just when he is intercepted by a web journalist who asks him for an exclusive interview. Loken agrees on the condition that it be in a public cafe. The journalist accepts, since otherwise he would protest, thus starting the interview. The journalist asks him, bluntly and directly, if he is a hacker and player killer, to which the protagonist denies being a hacker and only admits to attacking MPs when they provoke him, having proof of them. This surprises the entire plaza. The journalist asks how he will prove it. Loken asks if he has heard of any hacker, this being the first time for the interviewer. He continues saying that there's only one video against him, taken a few days ago and surely already reported. The journalist deduces that the report was made and, as Loken knows, the administration already ruled that he was not a hacker. Therefore, he only plays without programs, only with his skill, and if they still suspect, he authorizes them to report him themselves. The journalist, surprised, does so to verify. Then he asks about his ability to catch arrows or not be affected by attacks. But the protagonist tells him that, with the game logic where a mage can disappear from buildings, he only has an unusual skill to catch arrows, and the other is a magical item that can be bought in shops. The journalist sees him as honest. So now he asks why the MPs made the video. Loken states that he is worried they want to eliminate him. The interviewer asks why they would have anything against him. However, Loken has a video. With that information uploaded at night, it leads to the final question. The DMP were eliminated. Loken accepts without hesitation, stating that he did it because they provoked him, making it clear that the same will happen to anyone who threatens him. Just during the night, the promised video goes viral, showing several altercations that Loken had with the hunters and the MPs. Among them is one where Piria claims to be with the hunters, and it shows how the MPs bothered the protagonist. While hunting, Loken was calm about how he turned the situation around, knowing that in the past, he had already gone through something similar with people trying to spread rumors about him, so he learned to always keep it recorded, even though it costs him a hard disk per month. Now he wants to see Piria's face after that, who is just at home furious, while OG tries to calm him down, failing because he doesn't understand how he found out about his relationship with the Blood Hunters. Right then, his girlfriend tells him that he could be Loken, her ex-boyfriend, the person they saw last time, after his username and appearance were clearly the same. Piria, with a smile, asks for the address. They arrive at a building where the couple, along with a masked gang, fight. They're there intending to finish off Loken, so they make Soj get them out using her cute girl eyes. At that moment, someone opens the door, and they start hitting him over and over until Soj stops them to show that he clearly isn't Loken. When they stop, the boy thinks they are thieves and warns them they will pay, since he is the son of the police chief. They can't believe it, cursing Loken, who is just very calm, on a nice terrace. With this, he managed to dissolve the MP guild. In just a few days, Piria stopped logging in because he was imprisoned, and his followers were so humiliated and rejected that they stopped logging in, causing one of the most important guilds to fall from the Lord, which Loken finds somewhat boring, although he thinks Piria must be having a pretty good time while he is desolate in his cell. For Loken, everything turned out well. Following his interview, he started receiving many fan messages, which even created a fan cafe, calling it a bit ridiculous, but he didn't mind, since now he could enjoy all his gold earned thanks to the game's popularity. And inflation happened, and everything's prices went up. In this way, he sold half to buy a nice apartment, since he needed more space for his new state-of-the-art capsule. So now he returns to the game to reach level 100, first arriving at a dark swamp where a one-handed bandit threatened him, saying his boss would come to exterminate him. But this only made him finish him off with one blow, complaining about how much humanoid monsters talk. Although the good thing is that now he will end his wait. Just then, a loud scream came from inside a cave. This was the bandit leader, level 100, Gertotten, whom the protagonist was expecting, but when he sees him, he appears disappointing, belittling him, something that enrages the monster, who launches an attack. Loken prepares his powerful war cry, which lowers the boss's stats, and discovers a camouflaged enemy. The bandit sub-boss, exactly as he planned, remembering his past. When the battle against the bandits could unlock a fight against the King of Wrath and a confrontation that has as a prize a Fury Axe. Excellent for a berserker. Returning to the fight, now he must finish his enemy. He tells the sub-boss that it's a pleasure to meet him, then splits him in two. Gertotten is surprised and launches an attack. The protagonist retreats, but confidently, making a red flash of light, which terrifies the boss, who sees the berserker state activate. In that state, he charges forward, sending the boss flying, who tries to use combined techniques to reinforce his body and strength, but Loken furiously shatters his shield or fortification again, then tests the bandit's endurance, who, with no options, takes the hit, thus ending the fight. And Loken, leveling up, with this he finds two items: the personal letter of the God of Wrath, and the last page of Harkon's diary, with which he can finally change the others and obtain Harkon's logbook. It is basically his map, which, when all clues are combined, reveals the location of the place, while a gigantic undead sitting on a throne waited in a cave. This is how the protagonist goes to a desolate wasteland, complaining about how well hidden it is, until he reaches a cave where he finds Jarkon's bones, which he examines only to take a ring and then search for something, apparently an entrance where he places the ring, unlocking the Cave of Death. And so he arrived early, and Harkon's ghost blocked the mission, since it was not a place for someone with a low level. But Loken confidently entered the Cave of Death, even at level 90. Quickly, a bunch of undead appear, who crazily attack at the front, defeating them using combined skills. But they're very strong, so he must retreat and prepare a plan to face the gigantic horde of undead monsters, happily jumping, since at least he doesn't have to bother searching for them, and begins breaking skeletons one after another, defeating as many as he can, with confidence and strength. He ends up sending hundreds of skeleton pieces flying into the air, feeling proud of his berserker state, although right at that moment, a noise alerts him, surprising him. From somewhere, a great flash of light followed by chains appear and announce the arrival of the giant skeleton, who states that the seal has finally been broken. His name was the Forgotten Skeleton General, Chief of Samizmore. He plans to use him as an example to demonstrate his strength, but the protagonist moves immediately, jumping to strike. The skeleton chief blocks him, using the dead, considering Loken insolent. He watches as his blow is blocked, counting that the beast could summon many dead in the battle whom he could strengthen with his ability, Death Aura, so he had to avoid summons at all costs. But still, the skeleton launched an attack, clashing weapons with Loken. He stepped back, waiting for the chance to make his move using his coward's ring. When the skeleton used his great power to sweep everything away, he grew confident after having exterminated it, and tried to summon it as an undead. However, he couldn't, because the target wasn't there, making him even angrier, rising into the sky to prepare the death or a skill. Then, behind him, deactivating the stealth cloak, Loken appeared and struck him with all his strength. The protagonist kept attacking without giving him a break, but the skeleton boss tried to gather spiritual energy to activate his technique, spiritual transformation, which would mean a second phase that Loken didn't want to reach. And so he began with the Ironworker skill, which was for summoning undead, and with his Knight skill, he used Mount, combining his abilities, summoning from the jaws of the earth a gigantic skeletal horse called the Ghost Steed. The gigantic figure of the steed, alongside the boss, dominated the sky. Before a Loken, who could only watch, the boss shouted at him to kneel before the power of the Empire, charging the attack, and so both clashed swords. Loken tried to hold on, but ended up being overwhelmed by the overwhelming force, sending him flying. Loken landed on his feet with little energy and badly injured, feeling as if he had been run over by a truck, so he had to analyze while drinking some healing potions. Although his strength was superior, the boss's speed was such that his momentum made it a complicated fight, so he would have to change his options. However, his best weapon, Berserker, was not an option because it could sweep away his rival, but the penalty could be complicated, so he would have to do it without Berserker, and his close-range bombardment plan was going badly. However, he planned first to eliminate his biggest problem, the enemy's great mobility. Pulling out his axes. Although he knew he could die, he would try. Throwing both axes, which the general considered an insignificant attack. Something Loken knows well, setting up his next move. A frontal attack. This surprises his opponent, who thought he was coming for him. But Loken ends up attacking his horse, causing the rider to fall, who is furious. Now Loken prepares for the strike head-on, aiming to kill him, attacking again and again with great force, until he finally manages to stop the spiritual transformation. Thus, Loken is determined to end it all, splitting it in two, giving an incredible demonstration of power. In this way, the general ends up disintegrating, leaving behind a jewel that contains the essence of death, exactly what the protagonist was looking for and why Jarkin gave his life sealing the cave. The essence has the power to summon death, but he does not rush to seal it, opting to summon the dead around him and spread death. Beginning to see how thousands of skeletons rise, heading straight to attack him. He eagerly expected this, starting to attack mercilessly, destroying everything in his path. He asked for more and more to reach level 99. And so Loken reached level 99, happy to have finally achieved it, since the undead were constantly regenerating. In this way, he had exhausted all his bandages, potions, and safe zones, and had fought for 4 full days straight, but he was the first to reach this level. So he took the essence of death and his new title for clearing the dungeon. The title increased his offensive power, resistance to darkness, and a 50% critical damage against undead, which allows the protagonist to summon undead. But if he does not seal the essence of death, it will consume him. So he hurries to leave the cave, completing his mission, and activating the runes to claim his reward. Then at the Trinsic Mages Guild, where Moderian watches in shock as Loken arrives with the essence of death, which he found by following Harking's log. The mage interrupts him to take the essence and give him a very powerful regeneration potion that the protagonist quickly devours, which excessively restores vitality with the mission completed. He can disregard the death energy, which in the future will rise, again awakening the skeletons in the city, leaving that for later. And so he leaves right then, at that moment. Moderian stops him like a noble wizard and thanks him for risking his life to prevent a great danger. And with a cool, inspiring look, he offers to meet again and thus help each other. Loka, not very convinced, accepts, pretending to be happy since he really cannot. Refuse, or he won't be able to progress in the story. And that's how he joins a group made up of elves, humans, gnomes, and dwarves with the title of investigator. With them, he can complete missions, and, most importantly, obtain the investigator's ring that certifies him as such and gives him the ability to, once a day, recover 3,000 hit points, very useful for the Berserker skill, almost like an extra life for Logan. Again, Moderian bids him farewell with a smile, expressing that he will support him. The protagonist is annoyed that this wizard pretends to be inspiring, although he quickly forgets that and walks in a very good mood toward his third job change, arriving at the Berserker Guild, where he is again received by the manager, who asks for a new job. The manager, surprised, thinks he resigned, because he had just been there a few days ago, but Loka denies it since he had the required level for his third job, which surprises him as he could be the first to achieve it on the continent. In this way, he is given his final mission, to reach level 100 by defeating one-on-one a level 100 or higher. But this only makes the protagonist smile, as his victories against the Lake Knight, the bandit leader, and the skeleton general are confirmed, leaving the guild manager in shock. Thus he is admitted amid an imposing red aura, announcing Lokan as the first S-class user, now a true berserker. The guild manager, amazed, wonders who he is. Lokan replies that he should prepare because he will hear about him in the future. Then he cuts the epic moment because he wants his reward. So the manager offers him his options, 2 swords and an axe. And as always, he chooses the berserker axe, which fits well in his hand. Next is to assign the new skills: strength, guard, defense, spinning attack. And now came the combined skills, which the person in charge says are 3 that must be placed in a book and can only be done once, so he must be careful not to waste resources. But Loka doesn't listen and asks for all the books of his skills. The person in charge, feeling ignored, decides to sell him all the resources and cannot give a discount, even though he likes him, but he gives him a gift, a jewel, the only item that allows him to use Berserker without penalty, something Loka didn't expect to get so soon. And it has a good use for her, so she pays and leaves, leaving the person in charge very confused, wondering where she got so much money. Feeling that she could be, in the future, a master, he returns to Kadon to talk with Storian, who is glad to have had a good eye for her, but Loka still doesn't like the manipulative mage that much. Then, the old man asks her about her next destination, and the protagonist replies that she will go to Crossroad. However, the old man doubts she is ready, but knows she can surprise him, warning her that she will encounter other races. Loka knows this, since Crossroad is a city only for players, level 100 and above, where there are not only humans but also coexist elves, dwarves, gnomes, and many NPCs acting as users. Loken leaves. The old man gives her one last task, sending her to the tunnel. With a letter from Malcolm, the captain of the Royal Guard of Cross, the protagonist notices she still hasn't finished the missions, saying goodbye with a calm smile. Until she reaches the tunnel, her smile changes when she sees her transport. A small cargo wagon operated by the gnome. Like him, which seems to be 100% safe. The protagonist thinks it's better to go on foot, but she would lose the advantages of arriving first to the city, this being the only means of transport. So she gets on the wagon, which had never been used by passengers, and speeds off at full speed, traumatizing the protagonist, who later arrives in front of the city gates. Guarded by an elf, the elf sees him and asks for his identification. Half dizzy, he doesn't understand and keeps moving forward. The elf warns him that if he continues, she will shoot, but the protagonist was still feeling very bad from the journey. So they shoot an arrow at him, which Loken easily stops. Then, with an intimidating aura, he approaches the elf, who just closes her eyes expecting a hit. However, Loken only approaches to show her his investigation ring, to identify himself and enter the city. Still dizzy, he hopes this is the city, where he will take revenge on the gnome again. And that's how he arrives at Crossroad, which is much bigger and more incredible than the other cities, being the place where everything really begins. There he receives his rewards for being the first to visit, obtaining an extra 5% improvement in his stats. And the locals seem a bit hostile toward a human, even though his title should make them friendly. But at least, it's better than in his past life, where humans were discriminated against in that city. But he was really exhausted coming out of the game, and that's how Loken gives himself a well-deserved rest, where he sees on social media that someone is on his heels. Since there is another level 99 player, who could be Odin. Then a cheerful girl with glasses named Ruby, a reporter from Game Van, introduces her guest, the first player in the world to reach level 99 in the Lord, although she cannot reveal his identity or face, since those were the conditions of the interview. He seems very humble, as he doesn't want to be famous, and his answers about how he reached level 99 so fast are also humble, or rather evasive, saying he just understood the game. And the most efficient place is at home. Loken watches all this. The interview continues, asking him what he plans to do now, and the anonymous player confesses he will create a guild and has been alone because he doesn't consider anyone a colleague unless they can reach the third city. Surprised, she asks him about the name of his guild, and the player with a smile reveals it to her, which will be Ragnarok. Loken smiles cheerfully and fiercely states that he is looking forward to it. Meeting the son of a bitch. Later, the protagonist practices with his axe, a little nervous at first, thinking that with the events he altered in the past, maybe Odin wouldn't appear, but he did, and even faster. While practicing his spinning attack, he assumes that the reason for his time travel has to do with Odin and the game, so even though he wants to go blow his head off, at that moment, he will settle for that poorly drawn sketch, thinking he will have to give him some time, since for now that guy was very weak, and he wouldn't be satisfied if he finished him off like that now. Activating his strength ability and approaching with an imposing aura, thinking about how to attack him when Odin has gathered his entourage and believes he is the strongest in the game. That's when he will crush him head on, this being his form of revenge, eagerly waiting for Odin to become stronger. Although now that he finished warming up, he goes for combined skills, where he combines strength with a war cry, this being exactly the result he expected and naming it the Scream of Madness. When combined, they could vary from stunning to reducing the opponent's stats. Exactly what Loken was looking for, being immediately surprised, since it seems now there are 4 slots for combined skills, when he always knew there were 3. This is due to his first-class user achievement, which gives him an extra slot. This makes Logan happy, who sees it as a great advantage since achievements are the best way to surpass others in the game, thus starting the next combination. Later, in the Dwarves Guild, the person in charge finds the protagonist strange, who seems to be begging to help them. The dwarf doesn't find him trustworthy, although he lets him try. Logan knows that the dwarves themselves couldn't complete the mission, thinking they should be kinder to him, but he holds back his fury, since he couldn't progress if he didn't gain the trust of all classes, leaving aside the elves because they're egotistical and condescending, trying with the dwarves, who are equally narcissistic, which annoys the protagonist. Thus, he arrives at the Orinal mine, from where he must extract strange minerals to gain the dwarf's trust. You only need to collect 50 blue minerals. The protagonist thinks that with a mining skill, many could do it, but they would spend more time because they would collect all kinds of minerals. That's why he had the perfect plan. However, some kobold thieves raid the Loken mine. They interrupt him, thinking he shouldn't mind if he could just take them. The raiders are surprised, to which Loken has trusted. He tells them they will suffer the same fate as his companion. They attack just as the protagonist combine strength, dash, and spinning attack. Then, the kobolds attack him by surprise, just when he uses the guard skill, and then grabs the kobolds by the neck, tearing them apart, believing that in the past, when he reached that point, it was very difficult to finish one of those guys, and now he crushed them, calmly leaving them behind. Defeated, he now proceeds to take the minerals, finding many, but he knows that collecting the 50 required by the mission is not enough, since what the dwarves really want is to reclaim the mines from the kobolds. So, preparing himself, he wanted to save time by finishing them all later. Commodity, mining officer level 115, seems to hear something, but pays no attention and keeps working. Meanwhile, Loken uses the stealth cloak, analyzing the kobold leader. He knows it's tough to face a boss and his subordinates up close. It's complicated, so he looks for another alternative, which appears in the form of a cart full of minerals, which he sabotages so it runs wild on the tracks. The dogs are surprised, and the leader sends them back to the cargo. Meanwhile, the leader smokes to relax, tired, thinking how annoying it is that the dwarf troops arrive. Then, he demands the protagonist come out, since even if he is invisible, he can smell him. Loken comes out, confident, mocking the dog's nose, which enrages it, and drawing its claws, it launches an attack using the combined skill Crimson Burst. The protagonist also uses his, combining all his skills, to unlock his mega skill, Destruction Burst. It increases his strength by 200%, and its energy cannot be stopped. In the clash, Loken ends up winning, throwing the kobolds to the ground, whom he finished off with a shoulder charge that sent them flying. Then he approaches to say goodbye to the kobolds, but they beg for mercy. However, he ends up splitting one in two, leveling up. Meanwhile, deep in a mine, a group of dwarves is trapped in prison, cursing the dogs and demanding to be fed and also given alcohol. Suddenly, a giant rock from a dog seems to attack them, but it was just another victim of Loken, who exterminates them. He suggests to the dwarves to stay away from the bars. They are surprised that he is human and see how Loken extends his hand, fulfilling a mission from his guild. However, despite being kind, the dwarves remain disdainful, expressing that although he saved them, they still need to get out, since everything was full of kobolds, and their powerful leader suggests to the protagonist to go out for help from the Dwarves Guild. But he, with a victorious smile, suggests that if he got there, it is because there wasn't a single kobold left breathing in the entire mine, leaving them surprised. Back at the guild, the receptionist apologizes to Loken for not recognizing his abilities, asking for his help with future tasks, which earns him the title of Friend of the Dwarves. This allows him to commission the dwarves for some jobs, as well as the blacksmithing, although the strengthening skill interests him a lot, since there are only two ways to strengthen an object: a scroll or requesting it from the blacksmiths. The first method is complicated to find, since it is obtained by doing missions in the third city, and they will not be for sale at that time. The other is because it requires closeness with the blacksmith in question, and that does not guarantee that they won't charge him dearly, since being a blacksmith in the Lord's domain is considered one of the three dreadful skills to learn, and since currently no one knows how to strengthen weapons, Loken, he has the idea to make money. With this skill, he goes to the Dwarven Forge and asks one of them for a long sword made from a material he brought, which he considers very easy to work with, and it is since the protagonist specifically chose it because it is a simple sword but widely used in close combat. The cost would be economical, and considering that all the materials for manufacturing are found very cheaply at auctions, that's why he would increase production, and Loken remembers he can engrave something on the hilts. That's how he makes 50 sacks of long swords inspired by his new King brand. And now he will sell NPC-made products with brands and plans. His $1 million scam, which improves even more when he decides to use enhancement on the swords. And so he wanted to use the city's auction house, which would work to move his product. With users from all over the world, he wouldn't just double, but triple the price. In this way, he puts them up for auction, which ends in less than 5 seconds, leaving the protagonist happily surprised and beginning to understand that many low-level people with money are looking for better items, especially after Odin's appearance, since it forced everyone to level up faster. So he chooses to raise the prices. After many minutes, he was ecstatic from so much money he had. A total of 458 gold coins, about 10 billion WOM in the real world. Although he remembers that leveling up is important, Loken currently only intends to earn gold. However, Falcon, the company that created the Lord, notices a monopoly in the sale of enhanced equipment, detecting Loken. Unfortunately, this mechanism doesn't last long, as they restricted him from earning more than 100 gold coins per day. Loken was very upset because he only managed to take advantage of it for 2 days. But at least no one else knew about it besides him. However, he earned enough so that the cost of upgrading his gear and crafting a very long axe, which he named the Killer Axe, didn't feel like a loss. It has a great damage increase, and he is eager to try it out. In the next mission, this one takes place right in the semi-elf guild where he meets the guild master Terrell, who disdainfully asks why he is there. Loken, with the kindest smile, places himself at her service. But the spoiled girl tells him that a weak human does not solve problems, which annoys the protagonist, who tells her to be kinder, breaking the desk, but he is still rejected. So he has to resort to other tricks, showing his research club ring and the dwarves' recognition, which does not matter to Terrell. At least the dwarves' part, however. The research club part does interest her, so she takes it into account for a mission, to which Logan celebrates childishly. The mission is to rescue a gathering group that went out of the forest and has not returned. The guild master gives him an elf token, so the team will trust him. In this way, he must find and safely escort the group, exactly the mission the protagonist was hoping for, smiling, which scares Terrell a little, who doubts trusting him. But before setting out on the mission, he buys a huge black horse due to the new vast routes he must travel in that city, spending only 100 gold for his 4-legged friend. Right then, a huge corrupted forest spirit attacks them, only to be split in two by Loken's new axe, which worked wonderfully, although he admits these monsters are stronger than the Mind Dogs. Currently, one cut is enough to finish them off, so along the way he leaves parts of the monsters cut trees, arriving at his destination where he walks looking for the gathering team, finding a trail they left when supposedly escaping from a monster, but the semi-elves seem too light to leave tracks, which could lead him into a trap. He is surprised not to have found them, yet thinking he fell for a trick just when an arrow goes straight for his head, which he easily stops while smiling for having found his target. This only scares the group of semi-elf girls. One of them attacks, until Loken tells them he is an envoy of Terrell, and at first they do not believe him. But it showed the guild's seal, and they agreed to go with him. He begins to guide them through the forest, but they are scared of these monsters they had never seen before. Loka wasn't worried because she had taken down several while searching for them, something they again do not believe. And those together couldn't even handle one, and just then a horde begins their attack, to which Loka suggests they open their eyes wide. Jack will go wild. The monsters attack, but Loka dodges by jumping and then brutally tears them apart, smiling with great confidence, and thus prepares to go against the others under the admiring gaze of the semi-elves, who admire the protagonist's strength, who keeps crushing enemies until finishing off the last one. Now he asks them if they believe him now, while assuring them they shouldn't worry about that contaminated wood. This leaves the elves with sad faces, falling to their knees before the protagonist, who looks at them, confused, while they apologize and beg him to help them with something. They had come there to investigate how to stop the contamination of the Kalan forest, this being the most important mission for their species, begging him to help. He smiles as a new quest window unlocks, which consists of taking the elves to the heart of the forest, exactly what he was waiting for. So he orders them to obey him from now on, without question. Opa! This works well to keep them in line, thus beginning his journey with them. And so he must be cautious to hide from the monsters and not confront them, since that takes longer. But before continuing, one of the elves stops him, as they seem to have found what they were looking for, a small, glowing plant sprout, which could be called the World Tree, the symbol of the Semi-Elf Guild and a sacred entity to them. The reason for entering the forest from the start was to obtain it. The elves ask him to keep watch while they collect it, but the protagonist tries to remember how to cultivate the tree, and recalling something, he stops them to pour a healing potion on the tree. The elves, they got scared and try to stop him by attacking Logan, but his companion stops them. Since the sprout begins to grow, this is due to absorbing pure vitality, something the elves would never have done, as they see it as something sacred to pour anything on it, but the tree grows with the forest vitality, since it is a place without pollution. So now he proceeds to give it another health potion. This works more while the protagonist feels like he is losing money, so he better gives it some lake water. Kim Jin, now faced with the girl's complaints, which ends up turning the sprout into a seedling. This makes Logan happy, who with his greedy face eagerly waits for his hidden reward, although his celebration ends quickly when one of the girls shouts that it's a disaster, which confuses Logan, since the tree grew and had also absorbed energy from the entire forest, which ended up awakening the great guardian of the polluted forest, who is colossal, leaving even the protagonist speechless. So he will go all out, taking out his helmet from the Lion King's seal, which, luckily for him, ends up releasing the seal and its power, giving a mega buff to this accessory and increasing the shout-type skill. This catches the protagonist off guard, who thinks it is his best defensive item, and if so, just the helmet. Makes him believe the full armor must be very powerful, thinking that with it, he could be much stronger than in his past life. Although the elf yells at him, "What will you do now?" The confident protagonist tells her he will handle it, while materializing his killer axe and his berserker axe, beginning his imposing march. However, the leader of the elves sees no chance against the guardian, who is everything in the forest, further muffled by pollution, making it impossible for one person to face him, having to retreat. But these words anger the protagonist, who thinks the idea that he can't defeat him is from a complacent and limited person, so he will go against him to prove that his thinking is wrong. In his head, he explains that this being was level 135, had become stronger due to pollution, so logically the most he could aspire to. It was meant to distract him while they collected the tree and escaped, which would have been enough for the mission. But now his instinct screams at him to try. The monster attacks, missing by miles, which amuses Logan, until his smile fades when he sees how the Guardian's huge hand lifts the earth, creating a meteor shower. The elves barely defend themselves with a shield while Logan moves forward against a monster attacking her. Logan dodges, and with his skills cuts off its leg. However, he cannot escape a giant hand. That crushes him, although with precise cuts. He destroys the hand and keeps moving upward, cutting with spinning strikes, until another joint falls. The protagonist keeps his distance, confident in a limbless guardian. But from these emerge many energy tendrils that tear apart the ground and attack Logan, who, surprised, sees that these tendrils are vines, which quickly regenerate the guardian's joints, frustrating Logan as he thinks it's showing off, since regeneration should have its limits. Before resuming the attack, the elf stops him, saying he must destroy the core. When Logan stops, he sees the alpha annoyed because she thinks the protagonist planned to cut it until it no longer regenerated, which is exactly what he planned to do, since Logan is more brute force than strategy. The girl tells him it wouldn't even work, because the guardian absorbs the forest's energy. So the only way to stop its regeneration is for the forest to dry up. Logan, annoyed, after the lecture, asks where the core is. Luckily, it's a gigantic purple spot in the center of the monster, although to the protagonist, it's not that big. But he can't think much, as a giant hand slams him against the rocks. The moment of silence is broken by red flashes jumping through the air, and thus releasing the new berserker beast state, which emerges from among the shadows with an imposing red tint, ready to cut everything down. A bloodied Loken full of fury, threatens the little tree. Loken charges, and again he is attacked and dodges, with his combined skills of bursts of destruction. And now he goes straight for the core, managing to push the monster back and then attacking at full speed. Determined to test the limits of his power, while in the distance the elf leader watches him, surprised by how reckless he is, knowing that even if he attacks, it will regenerate. The Guardian follows him with his gaze, while the protagonist keeps attacking. Injured, he tries to use a war cry, which is ineffective against someone stronger. However, this only enrages Mazalokan, who combines strength and war cry, unleashing a powerful, furious shout that shakes the environment and stuns the giant, lowering its defense. In this way, from the air, wrapped in a red aura, Loken prepares to attack from the sky, showing monumental effort by combining strength, jump, strike, and slash, holding everything with his axe, while the Guardian only watches from the ground. As from the skill combination, Shield emerges an enraged Loken with a giant axe, preparing his deadly blow, thus connecting with the Guardian and landing a critical hit, splitting the monster in two, which can only accept that it failed, while the computer announces that it is the end of the Guardian, who collapses in pieces with a massive explosion. And the incredulous looks of the elves are seen. Loken standing in front of the Guardian's remains, smiling gratefully because his reward is coming. And that is how he returns to the guild, where Terrell is very excited about the tree sapling, asking how he got it, to which the protagonist, falsely humble, does not want to summarize what happened, and tells her that the other elves found it. The guild master is very grateful to him, since now they have hope again. This new attitude of the elf surprises the protagonist, as she has changed a lot from her initial arrogance. Although he does not care, he only wants the reward, to which the elf grants him the title Friend of the Elves and First Friend of the Elves, receiving the blessing of the spirits, which increases defense and energy regeneration. This will be useful in a future war, especially to use Berserker, and the surprised elf gives him something more, a bag full of 150 gold coins. Loken. He seemed dissatisfied, but he thought that being arrogant, they had given him more than he asked for. This way, he leaves as the hero of the elves, happily saying goodbye, which he finds fine, although he knows that if they come to think he is a danger to the tree, they will not hesitate to finish him off. Leaving that aside, he continues his next mission in the Gnome Guild, who seem to be unfriendly, since they do not like intelligent people. So for his test, he must clean and repair a musket, something boring for the protagonist, because it is easy. Later, he assembles it easily, but it is so old and rusty that if he wants to clean it, he has to do it carefully, millimeter by millimeter, feeling like they are mocking him, but he remembers the way to make it easy by asking the dwarves. Back at the Gnome Guild, the protagonist has a big confident smile, but the gnome doubts that it is so well done, thinking he used a trick. So he asks him about some detail of the repair, and he mentions a small mark on the inside and near the trigger area of the musket, which is enough to confirm he did not cheat. But he knew this from his past mission, earning the title Friend of the Gnomes, getting a 50% discount on transportation, and obtaining the side job of engineer. A good reward, since he can travel for less money and thus learns engineering to be able to create mechanisms like they did in his past. Some became famous like Krat, the crazy engineer, who used dark magic and with this job made technology to carry out deceptions on the battlefield, and along with his grotesque and scandalous personality, he became a rock star. That is why Loken takes advantage of technology to cover the gaps left by the Berserker state. So he immediately starts his work, practicing with some plans and materials in his free time. This way he leaves the guild, but when he leaves, recognized by the three races, thus finishing his main mission, earning the honorary title of Crossroad Resident, improving relations with the residents and being cared for by the guards. So, he finally ends his quest, heading to his other mission, delivering Storian's letter, taking it to the head of the guard, arriving at the castle, where he sees the facilities until Bruna's door. A very large and imposing-looking man named Malcolm appears, the head of security. This surprises the protagonist because of his height. For being a half-elf, they greet each other with a handshake. Then Malvin turns out to be very cheerful and praises the protagonist's physique, which surprises him, since he remembers this elf was very serious. However, recalling Terrell's words and his debt to his species, he understands why he behaves that way, feeling that things were much simpler. That man was the strongest in the city, level 200. He asks if Storian sent him and if he was still somewhat twisted. Lokan looks at him and hands over the letter, which the elf reads immediately. In it, it apparently states that the protagonist is part of the research team, which makes him happy because he is too. Although, Lokan already knew this, and so they start looking around. Malking watches him, seeing him as someone worthy, recognized by all races and parts of the research group. But what really surprises him is that, despite using intangible magic to cause him pain, he doesn't seem to feel anything. Lokan notices this and confidently approaches to ask if he passed the test. Malcolm is stunned and says nothing, but the serious protagonist approaches him while proposing to have a game. Although in his mind, he really knows that not even if a miracle happens could he beat Malcolm. Acting arrogant and aggressive, managing to gain the trust of the arrogant and aggressive elf who likes personalities like his. And this one, seeing how serious the protagonist became, ends up laughing and apologizing for the test, although the protagonist forgives him with a reward, despite offering him money or weapons or anything reasonable. Lokan only asks for one thing, to make him a city guard. Of course, part-time, since he is an adventurer. The elf agrees and will pass his information to human resources. Then, the protagonist walks through the castle, remembering that all level 100 venturers would be very close to arriving, and he, as a solo player, will not be able to keep them at bay, unless they are PK or play dirty like Pyria. So he has a plan. Just as a guard arrives to hand him his badge, which will identify him as a guard, he thinks about what he wants, which is power. So now, as a guard, he recalls his daily duties, such as patrolling for 1 hour, killing 20 monsters in the Arcanias, and joining the forces in case of disturbances. Something annoying but easy. Although the advantage of the job is having high trust with the NPCs, and also the bonuses they give are very useful. However, the real reason he joined was because, as a guard, he can kill players as long as they cause disturbances, since if a user disrupts the peace, they would receive a penalty. And since it is, according to the law, he could get a bonus. This way he can exercise power, but he is interrupted by the thought that there should be more users in that city, although he does not expect to run into Odin. So he checks the latest news. The most important is where an orc named you is supposedly the first to reach level 100, which Lokan sees with disappointment. So he logs in to see more. There he sees an interview with a very casual and somewhat humble orc, whom the protagonist considers a blockhead. That is why he doubts he will manage to surpass Odin. So Lokan knows that his target, like him, has already reached level 100, but keeps a low profile to watch the competition. Meanwhile, the orc continues saying that, as soon as he finds the next city, he will give them a video so everyone can get there. This annoys Logan, who dusts off the channel he created to go against the MPs, which generates very good income with few videos. This way he puts into practice his editing skills by uploading videos from the third city and its battles, sparking thousands of comments from users. Many of these are in favor of Lokan, while others call him a liar and humiliate a bald guy who is furious after Lokan ridiculed him. This is the orc from the game. While the protagonist watches the good income his videos made and cannot forget his fans, he decides to give them something that can meet their expectations. So he goes to a terrifying castle, where a butler with strange eyes greets him. The protagonist introduces himself as a city guard and is looking for Lord Truel, who needed help. The Lord looks like a vampire and welcomes him happily into his hall. Meanwhile, the protagonist, with a smile that conveys confidence, tells him that General Malking himself sent him, even though it's a lie. He only got ahead because he knew the mission, so he had to convey trust. And that's how the Lord accepts him and assigns him a mission to collect blood from trolls living in the cursed cave. This blood will be used to heal his sick little daughter. The protagonist accepts and says he will bring the blood, also planning to take advantage to complete the related mission. That's how he goes to the Cursed Life Cave, which he will use to make a video of the first public dungeon of the third city. And while recording as he walks through the dungeon, he explains the basics, such as monsters getting stronger at night, or that it's the first time trolls appear in the game, although there will be more enemies besides trolls. Just when one called Stone Monkey appears, a small muscular monkey, fast and agile, actually the easiest rival in the dungeon, but still potentially dangerous. The angry monkey jumps to attack, but Lokan hits him so hard that he bounces off 3 walls before crashing down. He falls to the ground and immediately becomes furious attacking only to be stopped by the protagonist, who continues his tutorial explaining that it's easy to beat him with speed. Then, he continues the attack against a scared monkey, which can do nothing, while being brutally slammed to the ground under the confident gaze of the protagonist, who tells the camera that it's really easy raiding the monkeys, like monsters that, although they move in packs, are only prey for the trolls, this is said. While a group appears behind, about to attack, but Loken meets them with his scream of madness, knocking them all out, while watching a giant bat escape, which was not very strong, leaving him alone, so he proceeds to the trolls area. Walking confidently, he states there are at least 12 trolls in the cave, although all are on separate grounds, so they would not attack him as a group. And as he walks, a monster stalks him from behind, and Logan smiles and also states that the troll race is selectable for users, since the wild troll had never been seen on camera. At that moment, the troll behind him plans to attack. The protagonist returns the look, annoyed, and throws his axe at full speed, leaving it with a mortal wound, while continuing with his tutorial, explaining that trolls are slightly faster and more agile than humans, although he considers the most important characteristic is their regeneration. While the troll is impaled by the axe, which he removes and attacks again, Loken does the same, charging forward and stating that they really should not be scared of regeneration, since they will eventually fall. Immediately after, looking confidently at the camera, he states again that it is very easy, while massacring the troll. Then he seems to face another one hand-to-hand, sending it flying and finishing it off in the air, stating that unlike G-Boss, or legendary trolls, the cursed trolls are not that complicated. While walking over all the bodies, almost fainted, of the dungeon trolls, thus ending the video, since he cannot show what comes next, which is that after acquiring troll blood, he looks for something else, and thanks to his Explore title, a bright light indicates the place. There in that crater, he pulls from a pile of bones a cow head, called the Beast's Curse, which is responsible for the curse of the trolls and other creatures of the cave, knowing he did not arrive there accidentally, but that it was planted, assuming it should be the same ones who they spread the rat plague and contamination in the forest, which are very close to the main enemies of the game. Although, even with their knowledge of the future, no one at that time could determine whose they were, and so the protagonist leaves the cave with these thoughts. He analyzes that perhaps the reason Odin attacked him from the start was to sabotage his search for the main mission. Then he brings the curse to Malcolm, who was surprised to see it, since he had studied the mutated monsters, but he didn't think it was due to the local curses. Very seriously, he asks, after so many attacks, do they know who is behind them? The elf has no information, so decisively he entrusts the investigation of the bones to the protagonist, opening a new mission, in which he must find the 3 monsters that ate from the cursed beast to prevent them from mutating. Loken walks through the city, truly confused, trying to understand why the Ragnarok attacks began back then. He thought it was because he was number 1 in the ranking and they wanted to humiliate him, but now he thinks it was to prevent him from advancing in the main quest. Although he really can't find a reason why the Ragnarok members would make an alliance with the evil NPCs. Then he thinks he really didn't care about that, since he was determined to question them, then tear them apart. Changing the scene now, he goes to the man to whom he delivers the troll blood. He thanks him and assigns another mission, hot sheep blood. Now having to hunt a devil sheep. Loken leaves the castle laughing at Troll's words, when he asked him to save his poor daughter, since the protagonist will pretend not to know for the moment. Leaving there with a smile, in the middle of the night, 3 devil sheep walk by when Loken sees them, happy to start his herding work, launching himself through the air to land, cutting one of them, leaving the other sheep motionless with fear. Loken assumes that since they are herbivores, they freeze in the presence of a predator. With this in mind, using his lion helmet, he attacks, managing to land a hit, but he is surprised when he sees it was absorbed by the sheep's fur. And then the sheep returns the favor by sending her flying. He lands on his feet and prepares using a combined skill, charge and headbutt, delivering a strike at the speed of light. Although the sheep manages to face him, the protagonist at lightning speed positions himself behind, saying, "What will they say? Who is stronger?" Throwing a blow so strong that it not only shatters the sheep, but much of the landscape. The other sheep is scared stiff and tries to flee, but Logan, a little tired, asks him to give only 2 things to live, his blood and his skin, which terrifies his victim. Later, the protagonist enters the city complaining about his night hunt when he hears how the new users arrived earlier than expected and were already fighting with the citizens who despised them, as they had poor trust levels with those races, and so the furious players start causing a commotion, strangling a dwarf. The pleas are interrupted by Logan's arrival, who is testing his guard armor and his disguise skill. The newly arrived adventurers try to explain, but the protagonist doesn't wait long and uses his power to expel them from the city. The dwarf thanks him, while he thinks those players really lost their composure by getting violent with an NPC, especially a merchant, although he understands them, since he knows how frustrating it must be not to be able to buy anything. In the city, being ignored and scorned by all the races, getting annoyed just remembering the humiliations he went through. While walking, it seems he had a good idea to make a lot of money with this information. So the first thing he does is buy an entire building in a busy area of the city, recalling his days in the real estate business. In the previous city, with his real estate knowledge, he knows that in Crossroad prices will only go up. However, being so large, monopolizing the properties is impossible, so he went for the best location. Entering to see its facilities, he realizes it is much bigger than he expected, so he plans to turn it into a shopping mall, taking advantage all the new players who arrive, who do not have access to the shops. So he will absorb that market. He begins organizing his shop using the first floor for essential items, like scrolls and potions, pricing them with a markup due to user demand. The second floor will be for more expensive premium items, and the third floor for the most branded items, like his TK swords. And finally, an auction room. With everything ready, he leaves an NPC vendor in charge while he goes out, although he starts thinking that at least the first 2 floors of the shop would be useless once players finish the race recognition, so he thinks about how to maximize profits. He quickly goes to the guard supply department, where he heads straight to the printing press, delivering a special quest, which will make newcomers hunt the monsters designated by Logan to gain benefits, and be recognized by the city, using Malcolm's name to give orders. A very elaborate trick so that users who arrive looking to level up hunt the monsters. He needs to obtain cheap materials, as he will be the only buyer and will extend the lifespan of his shop. Although he remembers he must go to Truel. There, he is surprised because he completed the mission and is sent to Chama, Trinica, to receive the ingredients. He agrees, but hears a strange noise. The man tells him it's nothing, which only makes Oaken laugh, who knows something is going on, laughing as he leaves, logically recalling what has been noticeable from the start, that the man is clearly a vampire who is trapped a young girl who is not his daughter, but rather the being with the highest quality blood for vampires, a high elf. High elves are a minority among elves considered of the noble lineage of the bloodline. There is a legend that if a vampire drinks the blood of one of them, they will gain incredible power immediately. To do this, they must be a vampire of great power, as a normal one would simply end up melting. Precisely, Truel would end up like that, so he resorted to witchcraft, thus strengthening his powers. With magical items, he hopes to drink the blood without dying. This is how Loken crosses the eerie night in the Mist Valley, searching for Tirika, to whom he must deliver the materials. This proves very difficult due to the darkness and the vastness of the forest. He thinks anyone else would have already given up. Then a pack of level 115 mist hyenas appears. Loken notices them, but immediately prefers to quicken his pace, wanting to finish the mission quickly. This annoys the hyenas, who follow him closely, although it seems he left them behind. Seeing them so slow, he confidently speeds up until his foot finds no ground. Completely pale and embarrassed, he falls into the void, blaming the mist. Then he gets up embarrassed and sees how he is surrounded by hundreds of hyenas who look at him hungrily. The protagonist looks around and, planting his axe into the ground, he smiles and wonders how many monsters he could take down at once, so he would soon find out by launching into the attack. Meanwhile, he remembers that the biggest disadvantage of berserkers is fighting against many opponents, mainly because they don't have attacks that hit multiple targets at once, so he must deal with enemies one by one, which becomes tiring. To compensate for this weakness, he sets up his Mega Destruction Burst, passing through all the hyenas and destroying 80. In this way, he knows that with the combined skills he created, he managed to slightly overcome the lack of area attacks. But he also thinks these moves would only work with normal users because if he faced Ragnarok again, he would be at a disadvantage. The reason is that the destruction burst is effective against targets in a straight line, not working with group attacks when they're spread out, so he needs a good area attack to face them. Thinking about this, he curses the sky, swearing by Odin that he will create a technique to finish it. Although then he remembers that the mission comes first. Continuing to walk, almost at dawn, a man warns him not to come any closer and to leave the ingredients on the ground. This is the shaman Tirikalokin. He throws it at them in a box, but immediately changes his aura and, using the ingredients and many spell leaves, recites a powerful spell, making hundreds of things fly around him. Loken, strangely, asks about his type of magic until he finishes, handing over the blood imprint, which increases vampiric strength. Loken remembers that his mission is to deliver it, although the man only wants it to access the elf's blood. At that moment, they say Loken did not want the mission reward, but the blood imprint. The shaman warns him not to do it, but the protagonist takes it, becoming marked by the best imprint for melee. Life absorption that Loken, imposing, sees the results on his body, while thinking that, although he has strength, he lacks endurance. That is why he seeks the most powerful melee imprint, which allows him to absorb energy from his opponents. 1.3%, according to the strength of the hit. In the future, this will be patched, reducing its effect, but those who acquire it earlier will not lose it. However, the protagonist receives a large energy charge to the face, but it does not even tickle him, observing the shaman, who curses him for stealing it. Loken decides to take this opportunity to test the imprint, moving at great speed, easily decapitating the shaman, receiving the energy bonus and, additionally, the goblin's head. Although the protagonist wants to keep testing his ability, his smile indicates where he will test it first, passing through the Berserker Guild, where he requests a series of skills to combine, highlighting strength, charge, spinning attack, and solid body. Then, practicing the movement, he finishes the selection by creating the wind wheel move, which allows him to spin, continuously destroying his enemies, as long as he has mana. After doing this, excited to have his first area skill, he runs to the guild to test it, heading to the Cursed Cave. There, he relentlessly searches for monsters to fight, rejoicing at being surrounded by many, ready to test his incredible technique. These cave werewolves prepare to attack him, but the protagonist waits calmly, receiving multiple bites all over his body, which he enjoys until he only has 20% vitality left. That is when he prepares to start cutting them down, moving as he practiced among the wolves and with his big smile. His new technique explodes, generating a powerful tornado that sends the wolves flying while cutting them, destroying all around him. In the center of the crater, only Loken remains, surrounded by the remains of the wolves and with all his life restored. Surprised that with only 3% vitality against all those enemies he succeeded. Happy with his new ability, he thinks it is exactly what he needed for Odin and Ragnarok, although now he thinks that by taking the scroll and finishing the shaman, the mission will be cancelled. His next move is to finish off the vampires and claim the reward from the high elves. So he brings the goblin's head to a frightened bad guy, who asks him where he found it. The protagonist explains that Truel is a vampire, and that he has a captured elf. This angers Malcolm, who decides to bring the entire guard to attack the aristocrat, but Loken calms him down, telling him that at night it will be very dangerous, managing to convince him to wait until dawn. But this was the protagonist's plan to go first to Truel's village and rescue the high elf to claim the reward. Meanwhile, in the nobleman's mansion, the elf is asleep, feeling immense pain, while Truel bares his fangs to taste her blood, while Loken arrives at the imposing villa smiling because he was able to convince Malkin, who, thanks to him, was able to get the mission and thus test his new techniques against a stronger opponent. Then he climbs through the mansion to a window, but when he arrives, Truel is not there, so annoyed. He first looks for the elf, whom he easily finds sleeping in the room. Approaching, he tries to wake her, but no matter how hard he tries, he cannot, thinking she's drugged. That is why he looks for another way to wake her up, bringing exactly what he needs, an alarm clock. He created it while practicing mechanical engineering, placing it right next to her. The noise is so loud it almost blows the protagonist's ears, but the elf doesn't seem to wake up until with a loud scream. She asks him to turn it off. She can't tolerate the noise, so Loken destroys it, and then formally introduces himself as a city guard. The newly awakened elf turns out to be a noble woman named Irajim. The protagonist apologizes for the method. The elf understands and is about to take the chivalrous protagonist's hand, but before doing so, she sees something behind him. Loken turns and sees True Eel in the center of the room. Furious, calling him a rat. Irajim is very scared. Loken is happy to find him, although he had initially planned to secure the lady's safety first and then go after True Eel, but since he arrived, he gives him a warm welcome, ready to fight. While the elf asks if he is really going to face him, True Eel, furious, prepares to attack. Loken is ready to fight as well, but suggests they change places so they don't hurt their mutual prize. Launching into battle, clashing multiple times until they fall off the tower. As they continue fighting in the air, Loken gains the advantage, beating the man, until they crash to the ground. There, True Eel is on his knees, while the protagonist, standing, imposing, asks how it feels for a human to hunt a vampire. But he, furious, unsheathes his claws, shouting that he will suck all his blood. Loken raises his axe, ready to go for his life force as well. This statement scares True Eel, while Loken charges the attack. The vampire manages to hold him back using his nails, which surprises the protagonist because of their hardness. True Eel stares at him closely and notices something strange. The protagonist gloats, showing him the bloodstain on his body. That is how the man connects the dots and realizes that Loken has been looking for that ever since he approached him. Humiliated and enraged, the vampire lunges at the protagonist, who barely dodges his blows. Suffering a severe wound on his arm and barely dodging the attacks, truly feeling the pressure, and realizing that his opponent is a really powerful vampire. Contrary to what he had heard in the future, Cruel leaves Loken with 20% vitality. All of this unsettles him. However, it does not change his plan to exterminate him. Launching himself again, the protagonist asks if he has already tasted his blood to then unleash his wind wheel, approaching to cut the male Loken sharply. He thanks him for the blood impression that, thanks to that strong blow, has restored all his health. All of this amuses the male, who does not care, since absorbing vital energy is an essential part of a vampire, so a human will not benefit him. Now before a confused Loken, the confident male begins to release a lot of energy, and then appears in front of him transformed into a giant bat monster. This does not faze Loken, since the design looked like a werewolf, but the goal is the same, to test his strength. So he waits for him, ready to attack. He receives the male with a gigantic cut, which angers him even more. So the vampire responds with full speed, launching strong blows with his claws. Loken was surprised. Not only was he taking damage, but he also couldn't recover with his blood impression. The male explains that the impression is effective on humans. Jack, if he takes more damage than he can generate, it will be his end. This does not discourage the protagonist, who assumes that if he wants to recover more energy, he just has to hit harder. Running aggressively toward him, the male prepares to receive him. He manages to wound him severely, although the protagonist manages to land a couple of blows. But he only has 10% vitality, and it was still decreasing. However, he did not care and kept attacking. The vampire has no plans to lose against the human, but Loken tells him he already lost. Just as he activates Berserker and then Wind Wheel, combining the skills, starting to spin. While doing so, he states that he is not a normal human and forms a giant whirlwind in the air, enveloping the male and cutting everything in its path. In the end, the movement remains. Loken stands in a crater, recovering all his health while visualizing in front of him what remains of Truel. This allows him to fully discover and learn the use of the imprint. Now, feeling satisfied, he will seek that which cannot be bought with coins from the High Elf, while the computer confirms his achievements in the log. In the castle, Malcolm leads a group of guards ready to eradicate the vampire. The Guardian does not want even dust to touch the High Elf, charging toward the castle. As they are ready to break down the door, it ends up bursting outward, leaving the general surprised, unable to believe a vampire could be so strong. At dawn, he then sees an imposing giant emerge alongside a shy little elf, recognizing Loken, who comes out confidently, apologizing for the scare. The elf states that the male was already defeated by the protagonist, leaving Mal King speechless, knowing that Trell was much more powerful than him. Although the other guards also doubt, the general tells them they don't understand. saying that the greatest honor granted by the High Elves, the Oath, has begun. A gigantic golden light envelopes the place. The elf draws all that light into her hands, forming a crown that she says cannot be bought or valued in money. This moves Loken, who sees how the High Elf approaches with what he seeks, the Oath. Elf for his bravery. The elves will give him their unconditional support, unlocking a legendary title, the Oath of Irigem, with which the relationship with the elves reaches its final phase. Surpassing the status of trust, Loken receives it on his knees, kissing the noble elf's hand, remembering that although this title does not increase his stats, it has special effects that money cannot buy, like entering the society of the High Elves, a tribe that if he could use, could be useful against Odin in the future, although for that he has to rewrite the world's history. Then we see how the elf thanks him and Loken says goodbye, but the girl stops him to offer a date and a delicious dinner. For the layman, it is dinner time. Since with Odin nearby, it's better to level up quickly. Pretending to look cool, politely rejecting her while using his runes. To travel to another point on the map, arriving directly at the White Coast. There he hopes to find the mutated monsters of his next specific mission. The one-armed blade monkey, and it appears right behind him, which makes the protagonist happy, since he didn't have to look for it, asking it to come closer. Meanwhile, at another point, a man with a large orb gets excited after finishing a fight. He is with Odin himself, who asks him many questions. Odin gets annoyed by this, and tells him to just follow his orders. As he watches the man walk away to keep searching for something, Odin thinks everything is going according to plan, although there is something about the pieces of the gear that bothers him. And his companion, in the distance, gets upset for not being the first to achieve the accomplishments, since Loken had already passed through there. Odin calms him down, suggesting that even if they don't want to, those who walk the same path must meet at some point. Meanwhile, Loken sees how the blade-handed monkeys approach in a pack, ready to finish them off. Moving forward to hunt, the others also prepare, but for the protagonist. It is very easy. Asking them to come closer, everyone launches the attack. Loken was happy, activating the whirlwind and attacking, cutting each one of them in his path. Leveling up and leveling up to eliminate the first mutated monster, the protagonist. Ends up tired and calm, stating that the monkeys were easier than Troll. However, now, a giant approaches him. This is the second mutated monster and field boss. The Blade Demon, a huge monster with a large core in the center, which is its weak point, although he must wait a little before attacking, since if he is patient, the demon will fuse with all the corpses of the other monsters to form a complete body, and only then be able to destroy it with the transformation completed. The attack begins, as he wanted the creature to transform completely, because now in that state it would make an article. Although it moves fast, Logan dodges to show his strategy, attacking even faster, starting with a heavy blow. That hits him directly in the head, but that is not enough. Starting to throw blow after blow, until the monster falls. However, its armor protects it, so Logan, furious, tries to smash it with more hits until finally its armor breaks. However, the monster on the ground smiles as it activates its special attack, which leaves Logan surprised, having to escape immediately, since thousands of blades will shoot out from a monster for 25 seconds before self-destructing. Although the protagonist tanks the thousands of blades with his destruction burst technique. One last blade heads straight for his eye, but stops at the last second. Due to lack of energy, he finally feels the fight is over. But the demon begins to glow and gather energy, recalling the last attack, self-destruction. From the smoke and fire emerges a smiling Logan, who states that they almost killed him now. But it was totally worth it, since he now has a fragment of the Blade Demon, a rare item that increases the power of edged weapons. Using it immediately on his axe, gaining the bleeding effect on hit, an effect he hopes to test soon. But first he must look for the last monster, though he decides to stroll by the lake first, searching for an item, the colored pearl, which might be in a clam garden from where a gigantic shipwreck can be seen underwater. The protagonist states that this is the place of someone very strong, while we see a tour of the sunken ship, down to the deepest part of the lake where a giant and terrifying frogfish dwells. Now Logan's task is to open clams. At first, he only finds normal pearls, which although he can sell, don't interest him as much as the colored pearl, which he finds shortly after, using it to increase his defense. But he still wants more. However, just at that moment, the Lion King's helmet detection skills activate. giving him a new investigation into a force similar to that of the helmet. He understands it could be another piece, and takes out the helmet to indicate where the place is. It seems to be the shipwreck. He was supposed to go to any way to finish off the mutated monster. So he will kill two birds with one stone. With a colorful pearl found, he immediately dives into the water, swimming quickly to the depths. Luckily, he uses the gills of a monster he fought recently to breathe underwater, reaching the last part of the ship. The Captain Malak's room and the home of the mutated monster boss he expects to come out. It came out destroying the ship and throwing a blow at Lokan. The first to come out was Captain Malak, a giant reptilian fish with turbines, who asks Lokan why he was there. He tells him he doesn't answer to the dead and then uses whirlwind, which is very slow due to being underwater, something that annoys Lokan, who tries to react. Just then, Captain B, since the protagonist's attack made him lose a finger, is furious and ready to attack. But the reptile notices that Lokan has already disappeared and he appears from above, and just then Malak summons his crew to defend him from the attack. Then he attacks from above, hitting Lokan, who sees with fury how the frog crew tanks the hits for their boss, reaching the limit of his patience, preferring to lighten things up, so wrapped in a red aura. And with the helmet equipped, he uses his best technique, Berserker, ready to take them all down by launching the attack, leaving the captain unable to move, who tries to defend himself with his swords, which are destroyed. Then he tries to follow the protagonist, unable to see him due to his speed until he appears from behind, throwing multiple blows that flash with an intense crimson red, shattering the giant frog into thousands of pieces. And with this, Malcolm's mission ends for the moment. The protagonist drags himself, barely alive, after admitting that he likes the berserker state, but the energy deficiency. He does not like it much while crawling. He finds a pirate-type coin. It has no value at all. In his first future, however, when activated, a giant lion's head appears, which has a chest inside. Just by placing the coin, the chest opens, making the helmet shine, and from inside he sees its contents smiling. It was a strange circular piece, which he takes, continuing to shine, until he notices it is the symbol of the Lion King, which he assumes belongs to the armor of him, the protagonist. Very excited, he stands up in a victory gesture. Also, he is surprised by the 100 points of intelligence and endurance it grants him. But that is not all that is in the chest, since he finds a cloth engraved with the history of the Lion King, in which he sees him, giving the upper part of his armor to the frog men of the area. The protagonist gets excited thinking it could be there, but he sees no clues nearby, until he remembers that in the game there's a scenario where these pirate frogs are stolen by the Pirate King, assuming that he should have that piece of armor. Thinking that, being a level 300 enemy, he must wait a bit, because he is not at his level, although he lies down to rest while watching the landscape. Thinking that for now it is enough gain, resigned and ready to go look for the rest of the treasure. So, returning to the city, he feels so tired that he thinks about going out for a while, but before doing so he sees an agitated crowd, fighting over something. He notices his shop, and that, apparently, all his customers are fighting over the products. Lokan sees him happily, seeing how he would be rich soon, but for now, he decides to better deliver his mission, so, with the most chivalrous, honorable, and humble face he can put on, he hands his mission to Malcolm, who is surprised and happy to see him, now knowing that he has finished off the 3 monsters. Now the protagonist asks him if he knows who is polluting the monsters, but Malcolm limits himself to telling him they are investigating a force, about which he has little information. However, for the moment, he must go out to become stronger. His next mission is to reach level 150, to access the restricted missions, so he thinks he should go to a dungeon, preparing with a defense scroll, starting his journey to the southwest of the city, admiring the impressive landscape full of trees. Then he begins deforesting, collecting 10 logs, and moves on to his next destination, only to be abruptly stopped by a confrontation with other players, incredulous, since no one could have discovered that dungeon yet, and he sees the fight between a boastful dwarf with glasses, who introduces himself as a great mini boaster, showing off to 2 guys whom he seems to have ruined the hunt. This boy seems to mock the others for being weak, so they, furious, start attacking him, but the little guy with glasses moves very fast. From a distance, Lokan recognizes him as the little gnome Midi, a gnome class user who tried to make his character as small as possible, intending to be elusive. His greatest skill is dodging opponents' attacks. He shoots a lightning bolt at one of his attackers. This seems to enrage them even more. Then a guard appears, or rather Locan, disguised as a guard, to stop them for attempted homicide, issuing a verdict, sending all the players who attacked Mitty to the detention center. Mitty thanks him, but Locan also tells him to go to hell. So that's why the gnome runs away scared, delighting Locan, who unleashes his power. Relieved that the fight didn't escalate, since they could have opened the secret entrance that only he knows, forcefully breaking a tree. A gigantic light, like a portal, activates, opening the dungeon entrance. Locan enters, being the first to discover it with a 30% experience bonus. That's how he first destroys the 5-color pearl to increase his strength, and also throws the logs very far in a straight line. These start to fall, activating the hallway traps and causing massive explosions, confirming to Locan that he can now begin to finish quickly, while throwing the last log into the trap. The protagonist tells us that the difference between that magical dungeon and others that are not is that they have an insane amount of traps, which are a death sentence for any novice player, even for those above average. It could mean the end, and although he has all his memories from his past life, he preferred to use logs to detect the traps, but he ran out of them. So now he will rely purely on physical skill, comforted by the fact that he is halfway through, starting to run while dodging arrows, giant axes, huge rocks, and explosions, although he was really expecting something fairer. What appears is a giant beam of light. The protagonist is surprised, since he basically summoned it just by mentioning it, and thus the specter appears, a level 120 enemy who is attacked by Locan. He knows perfectly well that he cannot defeat him by brute force, since he has a physical body. For this, he prepares something special, a fire enchantment scroll, with which all his attacks will have fire elements. With this, he strikes the ghost, who tries to protect himself, but Locan, confident that this will be the last fight, finishes him off with a great explosion. And now he collects his prize, a magic scroll called Fire Arrow. This is disappointing for Locan, who expected something better. Although it helps him warm up, determined, he begins his massacre of every specter he finds, until the effect of the fire scroll ends, surprised at how easy it was. Despite being created by a powerful mage, continuing on his path, he comes across a magic chest, which looks promising, thinking to open it carefully. In the end, he attacks it, since it was only pretending, knowing that the chest was actually a mimic, which he destroys. This finally gives him something good, a cowardly mage's shield ring and a mana charger, which already improves things because it helps balance his gameplay. However, determined, he will look for more items to keep them all, even breaking through a door by pure brute force, warning the cowardly mage, the dungeon boss, that he will die. This surprises him, while the protagonist activates his red aura, advancing forward with a burst of destruction. Although his attack is stopped by a spell that makes the ground very slippery, Locan does not resist and jumps for a slash from which the wizard also escapes. This frightened one appears behind, firing the cannons and activating a large seal. Beneath him, the cowardly wizard, confident, claims that if Locan is scary, he has no other choice but to eliminate him. But for the protagonist, those were the wizard's last words, jumping at him, only to realize he was tricked by a decoy specter, which annoys him, shouting into the air for the wizard to come out and fight instead. From the ground appears a gigantic golem, which delays him even more. Luckily, he sees a magic circle behind him, surely what protects the golem, and was simply defensive. So now he will go against it, transmuting his sword with a combination called Heavy Strike. The golem prepares to receive it. But this was just a trick when the protagonist passes by, straight to the magic circle, which he hits opening a portal. It was similar to the entrance one, revealing Georgie's hidden room, which he calmly observes until he is greeted by a large crossbow, wrapped in flames that goes straight at him, causing a great explosion that seems to eliminate Locan, while the cowardly level 140 wizard happily watches, seeing that his best technique worked, but his face immediately changes when he sees from the sky a huge red aura, which dissipates. So he can see an angry Locan in berserker state, cursing the wizard because he almost didn't make it. The terrified wizard desperately calls his golem, which is not very fast, so the protagonist easily dodges and goes against the wizard, who hits him, sending him flying. Although the coward remains unscathed, thankful to have spent good magic on the armor, which only makes the protagonist burst out laughing, since the armor makes him very slow, turning him, according to Locan, into a punching bag. hoping the armor withstands the beating he is going to give him. The scared wizard resorts to the golem again, which continues to distract Loken, since he knows that if he hits him, he will regenerate using the nearby rocks. Still, his plan doesn't change, and he hits him on the head to warn the wizard that he is next, while activating his whirlwind power, reducing every piece of the golem to nothing, stopping the technique, and now going after the wizard, who thinks, full of fear, that the protagonist is not human. Loken takes momentum to deliver a blow that shatters his armor, causing him to scream in pain, only to be brutally finished off on the ground, causing the cowardly wizard's game over. With this, Loken levels up while thinking about how he instinctively triggered the berserker state. And although it worked out well, he really thought that the energy hangover was going to send him back to the lobby this time. But now was time to see what he had gained, finding another coward wizard's ring, which allows him to escape the dungeon once a day, along with another escape item and another ring, which makes him wonder who the coward wizard was so desperately fleeing from. Try to delve into his memories to find a clue, and a door opens, leading him to a hidden room. It is in complete disorder, and, while complaining, he manages to spot a box with something shiny, picking up the artifact, exciting him so much that it even distorts his face when he sees it is a shield skill book. The first good reward, since he will be able to learn skills outside of his job. This way, he can create new combinations, although he is looking for a specific skill, which is the skill change. This allows him to change his physical attack for a magical one, and it will be very useful against those who don't have knowledge of magical defenses. Loken, while drooling, adds this skill to his inventory. After this, he continues investigating the place, finding a book that still shines, The Coward Wizards. This could be key to knowing what he was fleeing from, so he begins to read it with a serious look, learning the wizard's story. It said that he was forced to create something that corrupted monsters and perhaps also caused more havoc, a creation that could lead the world to ruin. However, the wizard cannot do anything because if he escapes, those who watch him will eradicate him, so he only had to join them until he took advantage of an assembly in the city to escape, losing magical objects along the way. And now that they don't need him, he is aware that he knows too much, so they will look for him to make him disappear. Determined, he fled to a refuge deep underground, carrying a heavy syndrome of constant persecution. The protagonist concludes that he was a weirdo and was truly being hunted, and notices that he talks about creature corruption, realizing that this information was unknown even in the future. Remembering that after the mutated monsters mission comes the fallen monsters mission. With this, he assumes that whoever is behind this is not an external force, but the humans of the city themselves are involved, which seems strange to him, since he knows about the future havoc the fallen cause in the two main camps. With this, he knows that the difficulty of this mission is too great, so he will pass it to the research team, since he still has to reach level 150 for the next mission, even though reaching this level is difficult. Luckily, he has an idea, returning to the city where he walks down the street with scrolls for his shop, which is indeed full of customers, leaving him very ecstatic, thinking about keeping all the city's money. Although at that moment, money is not the important thing, so he goes to the Berserker Guild, where he will eliminate one of their combined skills, the Destruction Burst, because it was in a straight line and didn't do much damage. After all, with the new dungeon skill book, he will be able to counter the Berserker's weaknesses using the skill swap ability, along with his strength, run, and strike, creating a new skill to the protagonist's excited gaze, who names it Bomber. This is a axe that he throws, turning it into an energy bomb that ends in an explosion. The only disadvantage being a 5-second charge, although it will help him farm points and in the future blow Odin's face off, so he goes to the dwarf shop, where he decides to buy all the hand axes they have, in front of a small vendor who runs away upon seeing his inventory, while the protagonist listens to some players buying at the shop, which is more varied than his own. Seeing them there, he knows they surpassed the gnome's reconnaissance mission, surprised by the quick progress, but remembering that everyone still has the challenge of the camp confrontation, a mode PvP that became as popular as the main mission, since in this mode they could face hostile users from other camps. And that was clearly more fun than hunting. He expressed that it was so entertaining that they forgot about the main story. He even had that problem. After this, they hand him his axes and he leaves, being cheerfully seen off by a dwarf whom he made rich with his purchase. Thus, he arrives at the war camp called the Outpost, from where he can go out a fight the NPCs and aggressive users of the rival Black Dragon camp, although he knows he still doesn't have a level to register as a free mercenary. However, he is calm when he meets the admin, who looks at him with contempt for being so weak. He has no choice but to control his fury and humiliation. And so the computer collects and seals the authorization to be a mercenary, and he leaves. Furious at the bald guy, putting that aside and heading to the deep canyon, using his stealth cloak to avoid fights until that moment. Arriving at a river in the canyon, which is the supply point for the Black Dragons. Determined, he takes out his tools to start rappelling down to the middle of the canyon, where he opens a hole and settles there, placing a rune symbol. And then he is ready to start farming with 98 axes in his inventory, while the Black Dragon NPCs walk calmly through the canyon, until a purple flash quickly approaches and explodes. He is happy to test his skill, while remembering that his plan was always to dig a cave in the middle of the cliff, to prevent the guards above from bothering him. And similarly with the guards below, who, even if they see him, will not be able to reach him, he arrogantly sends more axes at them, taking out several soldiers and leveling up while waiting to reach level 150 directly with about 90 axes in his arsenal. After a long time with tremendous back pain, he finally finishes wiping out the NPCs, using all his axes and reaching level 150, so he will move on to the main mission. Returning to the outpost, he presents a report that leaves the bald admin incredulous, who now looks at Loken with a bit of fear and respect. But he has not forgotten that he called him low level, and now they happily accept him as part of the camp and give him the rank of soldier, a job in which he can advance if he earns many redistribution points, currently possessing more than 300. With this, he must earn more to rank up and get more war missions, which, the more difficult they are, the better the rewards will be. He is also interested in the retribution points, with which he can access items in the merit shop. So he will seek to increase them quickly, heading to the city. Just as he returns, the first thing that floods him is nostalgia. The second, complaints from other players about how, because of some damn players, they have not been able to complete missions, realizing it is due to the users. From the Dragon Camp, starting an explanation, led by an ogre about why they fight between factions. From the third city onward, although many would say it is for items or experience, the reality is that they do it for the pleasure of defeating opponents, as exemplified by Logan trampling a poor boy, and we return to Logan, whom they call the player's instinct, which he admits to know better than anyone. Immediately after, he decides to approach the players to ask them where they are from. The others are from the other camp. They respond in the Boar House area, warning him not to go because it is dangerous. The protagonist hears this, surprised that they got so close to the city, annoyed because he thinks they are underestimating him, determined to move, calling his trusty steed, then heading toward the destination, leaving the players stunned because he was going to go alone for a moment. He arrives at the desolate spot where a group, led by an elf, who are completely injured, begging for mercy after handing over their items. The terrifying group of monster players, made up of a skeleton and an orc with a bull's head, tell them no, that what they will do is crush them while having fun. The skeleton attacks the elf, who is defended by a companion blocking the blow with his body. But the hit never comes, as Anna's crazy smile appears, sending a great golden flash that finishes off the skeleton. This alerts the others, who launch their attack while the protagonist gallops at full speed, imposing on his horse. The group suggests surrounding him without fear, but the protagonist is determined to quickly take out several of them. Then he jumps with his horse to leave the horse behind and reach higher ground, combining strength and skill change, throwing his axe, which turns into a burst of energy that finishes off the orc. Now Loken lands on his feet, smiling, inviting them to play. The monsters get angry and rush toward him, shouting that they will crush them. The protagonist, confident, greets them with a big smile, cutting one of them while shouting that he will be the one to crush them, rising up to attack his rivals with spinning strikes, which are so powerful they terrify the monsters. This doesn't give them much time to think before they are eliminated, earning 1 point for each rival exterminated, although that is little. So he will have to keep hunting. For now, he decides to rest, returning to the city, heading straight to a temple where, being very charitable, he donates 3 gold coins, receiving the blessing of a priest. Just like in real life, The advantage here is that all his stats improve slightly. The buff depends on how much they donate and only lasts a few hours. The next step is to configure their teams, dividing them into lethal strike, defense, and endurance, and then gather all their prey in one place. Starting by using a post online where he asks for information about the enemies of the opposing camp. This triggers a hostile battle between those who support Loken after how he dealt with the PKs, and those from the opposing camp, promising to eliminate him. This pleases Loken, who decides to start a live hunt, now with much more support and many more viewers. He goes to the battle camp where a small group from the opposing camp attacks a group of adventurers, but Loken stops them and proceeds to split them in two, cutting each of his rivals directly. After seeing his enemies scared to death, he gets annoyed, starting to suggest an attack position. Thus, the massacre begins and ends quickly, earning many experience points and leveling up. However, a group of black dragons attacks them. He waits for them alone to use his combined whirlwind skill to then shred his opponents into 1,000 pieces. They end up trapped in a gigantic tornado until he decides to stop it. Once victorious, he feels bored again, so he goes to his front camera to launch an open challenge to the enemy camp, proposing that if anyone manages to beat him, he will give them a good level knight's sword, leaving everyone in the chat amazed. After reading all the fan comments, he thinks this stirred the waters very well. However, he must be careful because also his own camp could attack him for the prize, although if they did, he would eradicate them. Calling his horse, they set off toward the northern plateau, and a long journey awaits them, so he increases the speed. Meanwhile, in the chat, they keep arguing about the protagonist and the hunting missions. Loken opens up, even with discussions from various guilds fighting over who will hunt him first. The protagonist sees this, who is calm and almost without scratches, waiting for it not to be just words, because it will be boring to finish quickly, while sitting calmly among a pile of enemy bodies fading away at level 157, and more than 500 merit points, posing in a desolate place. That was once the northern plateau, territory of the Black Dragons, which is marked like annihilated, while a scared orc watches the scene worriedly. He looks for an answer from his brother. The leader tells him, "Calm down. Those who were just eliminated on the plateau were weak, and they were much better prepared." This reassures the smaller orc while he sees behind him an army with which he trusts to win, while the protagonist, bored, listens to their approach, quickly noticing that it is a huge and determined group of about 40 high-level warriors. This was exactly what he was looking for. Now his plan begins, changing the set of equipment, this time for more defensive items, making him heavier and at the same time allowing him to run without fear of damage, challenging them to come closer. The group proceeds cautiously, trying to surround them. However, their tactics are interrupted by a gigantic swirling purple energy falling from the sky, sending the entire third line of attack flying, leaving those in front untouched. Loken approaches, pushing them back. Then an orc realizes they're trying to gather them in the middle. Loken jumps into the attack, confirming that thought, while taking down many enemies heading toward the middle of the battlefield, where he finally arrives. The enemies think he is easy prey among all of them, and launch their attack, while Loken takes a deep breath and momentum to unleash a powerful scream of madness. This leaves the orcs immobile and stunned, thinking it is some kind of trap. The protagonist, annoyed, tells them they haven't seen anything yet to prepare their final blow. This chicken guy traps everyone in his tornado of cuts and destruction, and someone calls him from the sky by his name, surprising him. He sees a local warrior coming fiercely. He manages to block him, becoming unbalanced. Surprised by his opponent's great power, he introduces himself as the Black Dragon's ranking, the Sword Master, whom the protagonist recognizes as Tides, the orc who wanted to be the first to reach level 100, and remembering him, he humiliates him and asks if he is ready for a new humiliation. Furious, he assures him that although he only wanted the sword and could let him live, now he will correct his habits with the power of a rancor, and then, at the speed of light, the protagonist's attack. He starts by positioning himself behind the orc. The orc is only amazed while Loken, proud, shouts that this is what a true rancor looks like. Loken celebrates, seeing him as a slow pig. Or maybe not, since he immediately gets confused when he sees the orc disappear at full speed, searching everywhere for him, thinking he might have even disconnected from the game. This frustrates him, ending up throwing a tantrum to get him out, while the cowardly orc is behind his followers, choking on potions. Then he confidently returns to propose continuing the fight, although the protagonist only looks at him confused, which annoys Ties even more, until someone points out that he has potion residue all over his beard, which he must have taken to avoid dying. The orc childishly says they are strength potions. Loken just looks at him with secondhand embarrassment and continues the humiliation, reminding him that he is live with about 30,000 people watching, who also feel a lot of secondhand embarrassment for the embarrassed orc. He decides to return with a combined attack called Dancing Blades. Loken sees it and drops his weapons, planning to face him with his bare hands. To the orc's eyes, this is understood as a surrender. His confident state changes to confusion when the protagonist slightly rises, grabs him by the face to slam him against the ground, earning a merit point for the pitiful victory. Despite everything, Logan finds it amusing. He thinks about how ridiculous Ties was when claiming a rank, remembering a true ranker from the future, whom he hates and feels dirty just thinking about him. Luckily, to improve his mood, he happily turns to see the rest of the orc army, who beg him for mercy. Later, in Crossroad, the protagonist remembers how he showed no mercy, receiving delayed notifications about his army points. Happily, he walks down the street when a boy who claims to be his admirer greets him and warns him that now more than 200 black dragons are coming for him. Loken is interested in knowing where they're coming from, as he feels these are merit points delivered to his doorstep. But first, he must prepare, so he goes to the merit point store. He uses 500 to buy a mark of honor. This raises the honor of whoever wears it, although the real effect is that they will earn double merit points while carrying it. And before continuing, he must end his stream by saying goodbye to his fans. His next move is to go to the Crossroad Guard, where Malcolm congratulates him for becoming so strong and unlocks the new mission. Besides gaining his trust as part of the mission, the elf tells him about the monster investigation, mentioning that there are some monsters that managed to complete the mutation and are much more powerful, and they have decided to name them fallen monsters. They have managed to capture some for research, since they shouldn't exist in that world. So his next mission is to kill one and bring back its eyes, which he will recognize by the green glow that the fallen have, unlocking the new hunting mission against fallen monsters, with the bonus that if he brings their remains to the research group, he will earn an additional reward. This makes the protagonist think again about a lot of money, and of course, better items too. Although the main mission will only reward more information from Malcolm, which annoys him, as he looks at the elf with distrust upon realizing that, even at level 150, the guard chief does not trust him, so without further ado, he decides to go out and bring the fallen back, with Malcolm cheerfully saying goodbye. And before leaving, the protagonist returns as he has information for the elf, whispering something in his ear that enrages him. Outside the outer fortress, a group of black dragon orcs is looking for the protagonist, but instead they find an angry Malcolm, backed by an army. Seeing them there, he orders to kill them all. Meanwhile, Loken starts his broadcast again, now from the third city of the Black Dragons. According to him, it has a beautiful view, so he will take his viewers to raid it. So he jumps off the cliff, falling in front of two guards, and from the moment he sees them, he knows they are the weakest, since all the strong ones surely went to face him in the city. Although he does not enjoy killing the weak, he has a mission, so he easily takes them out, apologizing slightly. He continues with the Black Dragon's lair. However, it was empty. Therefore, he calmly sets out to hunt the fallen monsters from a dragon's camp, which are easier than those from his own camp, where Malcolm continues to handle the invaders. As for Logan, he remembers how he cut off his transmission upon arrival to be able to hunt, tenderly running for his life. The protagonist laughs, although he accepts gray monsters at level 140, a normal monster, with which he does not want to waste time. But before the fight begins, both are left with surprised faces when a gigantic reptile appears in the area and introduces itself with a loud roar. This is Taylor, the dinosaur dragon and Haras's pet, who is level 181, exactly what the protagonist, was looking for. Although he is not surprised that this pet is a fallen, he feels a bit worried, knowing that when he defeats it, he will have to deal with the area's security chief, Yaris, who is basically Malcolm's version among the Black Dragons. The little wolf tenderly runs for his life. The protagonist laughs, although he accepts that no one in their right mind would face that thing except him. Determined, he gets in a guard stance and calls the reptile. The dragon responds immediately, striking with its tail. The runner jumps surprised, staying in the air, while he sees how the Rex immediately turns to try to eat him, biting his leg. Loken can do nothing but be shaken and then thrown far away. But he returns immediately, flooded in a red aura, from seeing the enclosure and with the blood mark activated, determined to finish off the lizard, lunging with a blade cut straight to the head. But his threat is nullified when the dinosaur dodges with its tail. So he decides to use another method, switching to the defensive area. He drops his weapons and lunges at the dinosaur, grabbing it by the tail and starting to spin it around. The reptile falls on its back, and having short arms, has no choice but to endure the blow from the furious Loken, who moves at full speed. The hit is brutal, but the reptile shakes it off with its tail. Now, wrapped in a green aura, the protagonist knows this is just the beginning. The dinosaur changes its form and begins to grow disproportionately, completing its mutation and moving to phase 2 before a Loken who seems genuinely surprised, watching how the short-armed dinosaur has transformed into a colossal dragon. Loken listens, standing up, and remembers that every fallen monster has special abilities. Taylor's ability is gigantism. The dragon wastes no time and attacks. With its gigantic tail, Loken dodges, but the tail follows him, hitting him and slamming him against the wall. Nearly knocked out, Loken remembers he's not just fighting a giant dino, but now one that's much stronger and faster than before. He complains about becoming a human donut, and that was just a rebound hit. Hating to admit it, seeing the gigantic dragon and recognizing it as the strongest opponent he's faced since his return, Taylor's eye shines intensely as he roars. Loken, still on the ground, is enveloped by the green aura of the reptile, which starts dragging the ground with its tail. But among the rubble, the protagonist doesn't appear until a gigantic red aura opposes the dragon's green one. Loken, now equipped with the Lion King's helmet, recognizes his opponent is level 200 and decides to take the opportunity to test how much power he has now, launching into the attack unlocked by the reptile. Taking the situation seriously, Loken looks for a weak point to strike. Luckily, he sees the wound he caused Taylor before he mutated, so he launches his bomber skill to distract him. The dinosaur dodges it, but loses sight of Loken, who moves to the side and delivers a blade slash, managing to hit the dragon's chest. Then he moves to attack from above. Taylor tries to defend himself unsuccessfully, while Loken runs all over his body, tearing it apart with his axe. Taylor roars with hatred, but the protagonist, out of his reach, manages to see his finished work, a dragon without eyes and missing half of its skull. Despite this, he still maintains his ferocity and goes back on the attack. Loken was waiting, ready to finish the fight, combining his skills, forming a gigantic axe with a handle that looks like a black rose, and jumping, he strikes directly at the reptile's brain, finally ending it. Thus, he manages to level up, completing his mission and earning a new title, the one who defeated corruption, with which he can reduce damage from corrupt beings and other effects not yet revealed. Sitting down, he reflects on how difficult the fight was at his level, and wonders why all the effects of his new achievement have not yet been revealed. His face changes when it is announced that Yaris already knows his dragon is dead and is heading toward him, possibly with an army, so he takes the oldest strategy, to flee directly to his next destination. Now in the Grey Forest, he searches for something in the home preserve, which holds a secret, and sends 2 axes to a pair of trees, activating a bright light from which a large rock with a seal emerges. Loken smiles upon seeing exactly what he was looking for, launching his bomber to destroy the rock and reveal a passage. According to legend, this is where the hunter's story began. Thus, he begins descending the stairs. As he goes down, he remembers how complicated it was to find that dungeon, especially because of the large number of missions and skills required beforehand. However, now that he knows them, it is much easier to get there. Your first stop is a classic room, with a symbol reminding you that this trial is different from the Lion King's, since in this one the person who prepared it for him is still alive, a living legend, Kieris, the troll hunter. Summoning a hand axe, Loken remembers this brave warrior who ended his enemies from the ranks of the Black Dragons, who surely never thought the first person to find that place would be a human berserker. Although he thinks it shouldn't be his, he will take it, thus beginning the first trial. Suddenly, everything goes dark, and his first and only clue is that he must find the light in the darkness. This seems way too simple to him, which annoys him. Meanwhile, a being with fluorescent muscles appears behind him, trying to attack, but it fails and is surprised by a blow that splits it in two. The protagonist must stay alert, surrounded by enemies who, although numerous, are really weak and easy to eliminate. Just as he stops his last strike, He realizes that finding the light in the darkness means identifying a small innocent. A goblin who shows him such a pure smile that it indicates the path to follow. The protagonist continues down the hallway, close to the wall, searching for another secret passage, and finds it by pressing a button. But this opens a trap beneath his feet, causing him to fall deeply until he lands face first, with tremendous back pain. While he recovers, it is heard how Phase 2 begins, which tells him he must destroy something. However, he doesn't know what it is until a golem appears from the ground, giving him a big scare. Regaining composure, he relaxes. This golem, like all golems, will regenerate until he manages to destroy its core, which will not be easy. Loken launches into the attack with a loud scream of madness, and then a stride trying to destroy it, but it bounces off. Recognizing it is strong because it was created by Kieris, the Troll King, the golem prepares to attack, and, opening its mouth, Loken notices the core in its head, knowing he will need destructive power. So he throws a bomber with all his strength, causing a great explosion that collapses the golem. With this, Loken easily passes the hunter's second trial, although he knows that if he had skill with the bow, it would be easier. However, nothing can stop him, so he asks for the next challenge, beginning the third phase. Seeing that everything is going very fast, he waits eagerly until he sees a small troll approaching him. Immediately, he remembers that this is the last phase and watches how the small troll begins to corrupt with dark energy. The protagonist doesn't hesitate and launches into the attack, but is blocked by the same energy, and it continues to follow Loken, trying to finish him, retreating as much as he can until he is at a great distance. From there, he sees how the little green dwarf enters a gigantic ball of dark energy. This is Kiaru's deadly release technique, a sort of cocoon from which the transformed troll slowly begins to emerge, showing his imposing full transformation while above his head rests a crescent of dark energy. And the final phase is to defeat Kiaru, who smiles at Logan. He quickly goes back on the attack, but the troll doesn't even flinch and from afar summons, preparing to counterattack. His blows are dodged. A frost, which he sends directly to bite the protagonist, who barely manages to block it. With the wolf now biting his axe and unwilling to let go, annoyed and confused, Logan decides to improvise, since he can't get rid of the wolf. He raises his axe with the wolf still attached and prepares to attack the troll, who dodges and switches to Kiaru, calling him a coward for not taking the hit with his companion. But Kiaru orders him to be quiet, saying he will pay for his sins, and launches the arrows of judgment at him, which fall across the entire battlefield. He rubs them and barely dodges. Preparing to counterattack, his blows are dodged, and he thinks that if he had something else, he would have already won, but he doesn't have time for that and keeps attacking. The troll waits for him, thinking that Logan doesn't learn from his mistakes. Using the binding skill, holding the protagonist, Yaru gloats, but is surprised when he sees that Logan's arm is very injured, with a red color emanating from the blood impression. Exactly what he was looking for before. Using the binding, he cancels it, throws him against the troll, splitting him in two and leveling up, saying that he finally managed to get rid of the slippery rat. His reward is a container from Monster Hearts, above level 170. Now, he maniacally takes out Tyler the Dragon's heart from his inventory, remembering how upset he was when he was given it, since it didn't seem useful. But now, placing it in the container, he sees its true usefulness. The container activates and grants him one of Kieris's abilities, the ability to penetrate the soul and the possibility to improve over time. This technique manifests as a tattoo on the protagonist's body, allowing him to use this power that increases his deadly strike by 10%, his critical hit by 50%, and lets him absorb corruption power, and so he can observe his achievements and his new ability, remembering that the critical damage increase is essential for archers, but the best part is the ability to absorb corrupt power, which is even more useful, as it will allow him to increase that power further. With this, he hopes to become much stronger to face Odin. Then, back at Crossroad, Malcolm is surprised by Loki's speed and offers him the information he promised. He tells him that the fallen monsters are being created by someone and that they have advanced, not only in that city, but also in the center. Loki explains that the center is the area of the fourth city, surprised by how quickly the story progresses. Malcolm continues with his explanation of these monsters, dangerous and aggressive, both towards their own kind, and humans, and how they still haven't found anything relevant. Vita Loka helps them investigate, giving him some support, a ticket for a unique mission that allows him to take a fallen monster mission, without having to search for them directly, saving him time. Now he has a clear next destination, heading to the human guild in the city. But upon entering, he feels discouraged seeing that the guild looks like a haunted mansion. Assuming this is because all the other guilds ignore them and the only one who comes out to greet him is a strange old man, who accuses him of entering and causing a local disturbance. He looks surprised, since although he seems like a simple old man, he wears a badge that makes him part of the council, an important piece for human prosperity in the central city. With this in mind, he decides to be extremely kind to him, offering his help. For human prosperity, the old man finds it somewhat strange, but it seems it will be useful while he drools, so he assigns him the Harvard mission, clearing the fishing area, finishing off several turtles, and taking them away. Loken comes out with a resigned expression, understanding that the old man is only looking to add exotic meat to his diet. Although the old man is annoying and the mission is simple, Loken knows that if he continues like this, he will achieve his goal, which is vital for the game, completing the race's missions. Heading to the beach on a nameless deserted island, where he quickly finishes off the turtles, but since he's there, he decides to look for something else. To get ahead, while digging in the ground, he finds turtle eggs. With this, everything is ready, starting a turtle barbecue to attract the only intelligent being on the island. A bit strange, but not frightening, and indeed easily attracted by the smell. This is a gigantic bird with a huge red aura. The eagle stops to observe the turtle meat that Loken is roasting, praising his culinary skills. The protagonist, somewhat uncomfortable, identifies the bird as Taimin from Clan Join, who drools over the food. Just as planned, the protagonist, on this mission, Loken must tempt the bird to get a favor, which is usually achieved with words, or as now, using a delicious cut of meat that continues to brown. The little bird can't resist and asks if he wants to request something, but Loken deliberately ignores him. The eagle, quickly upset, starts insisting to Loken, who finally does not give in, provoking the bird's curiosity. Loken keeps playing hard to improve his chances of the mission, managing to make Taimin give in, offering him a favor, any he wants, even to take him back to the continent. Loken's smile suggests he has achieved his goal, turning to ask for a pass to the sky, surprising the bird, who feels deceived. Loken plays hard to get again, adding fuel to the fire, which causes the hungry bird to worry about the cooking of the meat. The protagonist raises the stakes, adding a turtle egg. This makes an excellent compliment to the meat, turning the offering into an irresistible delight. The eagle tries to resist, but finally gives in, granting Loken a passage to heaven by giving him one of its feathers. Then it receives its payment and flies away annoyed with the meat and eggs, suggesting they will meet again. Loken says goodbye cheerfully, satisfied to have found his peace, heaven, a place that is at the very top of the world. Although before going there, he only thinks about his usefulness, determined and motivated with confidence, unable to contain his eagerness to cook them, pretending to be serious. Then he entrusts Loken with a florist mission, which consists of searching for 5 soft flowers for regeneration studies. The protagonist, surprised by the simplicity of the mission, understands that although it is not much, it is the beginning of the race's quests, explaining that each race carries out a quest with an object like the half-elves, who seek the resurrection of the world tree. The dwarves seek the resurgence of the most powerful weapon. The gnomes try to rebuild ancient cities. Each submission aims to complete that objective. But humans have a different goal: to resurrect their ancient emperor along with his army to regain their past glory. Basically, it would be another way to create the undead. Loken feels some condescension toward the human race and their mission in that world. However, he must accept it to advance in the game, having to go step by step. First, he must manage to enter the land of regeneration, which is very far away and belongs to the half-elves, being an herbarium where they cultivate plants. Luckily, just has an idea to go to the guild leader Terrell, who suffers chills just by being in Loken's thoughts, who only thinks about his usefulness, determined and motivated with confidence. Believing that everything will go well, he heads to the land of regeneration, finally arriving at the half-elves village, where the guards stop him from the start. They are hostile until Loken proudly uses the elf friend effect. Just by formally introducing himself, he makes the half-elves become his followers. Faced with the protagonist's generous offer of help, they decide to give him a job right away in the greenhouse, eradicating pests and feeding plants with supplements. This was exactly what Loken was looking for, mentally thanking Terry, who seems to be starting to feel the protagonist's strange vibes. He is then taken to the greenhouse, where he observes the beautiful landscape of that strange place that serves as home to multiple plants. Although his main mission is to bring back the tree of life. And precisely because of that, the flowers and fauna are extremely large. As a giant ladybug passes by him, Loken feels as if he has shrunk to miniature size. Although his thoughts are interrupted because he senses something unidentified coming from somewhere, becoming alert without noticing that behind him appears a giant praying mantis aiming for his head. In the next scene, they show the protagonist bloodied and annoyed, hating to deal with bugs, raising his weapon to finish off the insect. While complaining about getting so dirty, immediately the computer indicates that the mission has been completed. Loken finds it excessively fast, assuming that was the mission boss. With this, he has two options: report the mission as completed or stay and keep hunting, which according to the mission can grant more rewards. Ready for combat, Loken decides to kill 100 insects, something anyone would say is impossible to find, but the reality is he finds many and very quickly. Meanwhile, in a shiny spot, an archer was shooting arrows at a bug that is stopped by a squire. Both seem like players, and it seems they were lost under the gaze of their friend Yeren, who tries to support them kawaii, which works, improving the warrior's love libido stats, who return to the fight. Using their skills, the two compete to impress the girl, but the insect is unfazed by their attacks now. This beetle prepares its aura. It rises into the sky while activating the combined skill king's charge, sweeping away both players and heading toward the girl, who yells at her sims. They are wasting her time. They were so annoying that she even considers. The sound of the blades strike, and Loken appears, crushing the beetle, captivating Yeren's interest, who changes her expression to one of wicked victory upon seeing she found someone so strong. While the protagonist increases his count to 70 bugs, the players desperately search for their girl and, furious, find her clinging to Logan's arm, who hadn't even noticed her. Jaren tries to look cute to the protagonist, but he was only scared, feeling like he had a tick stuck on him. Meanwhile, the Sims keep trying to convince the girl to move on. However, she ignores them. The protagonist only thinks about how these three waste his time. They were so annoying that she even considers solving it with a bit of PK. On the other hand, the Sims seem finally disappointed when the girl rejects them, making Loken notice that his tick is actually a queen bee, who squeezes the players with a lack of female affection to gain benefits. This is common in the game, since you can change appearance and more using the cleric class, which has few users and a sweet appearance. That makes her very adorable. Despite having all this information, Loken still doesn't know what to do with the sticky being on his arm, and PK is not an option due to the penalty. Changing plans, he immediately changes his entire temperament, becoming a gallant concern for the young damsel, introducing himself and inviting her to join his group. Jerry doesn't hesitate to accept and leaves on Loken's arm, leaving the Sims crying, soulless and lacking female affection. Haha, yes I'm haha. Meanwhile, the manipulative personality of the girl surfaces, happy to get rid of the useless ones. And having found someone better, unaware that Loken plans to have fun with her later. Yeren just watches while Loken fights several insects, taking them down at full speed and leaving her amazed. The girl realizes she will have to put in some effort to keep her new transport happy, so she tries to act sweet and tender, offering help to the protagonist, who pretends with a smile. While thinking about how annoying she is, now she is fully committed to her role of helping. So Loken decides to activate his plan, asking for her help to defeat the next boss, lying to convince her to do a job that only a cute and small cleric like her can do. This scares her a little, but she can't let go of such a strong servant, so she pretends to accept just what Loken expected. The protagonist decides to disguise Yeren to attract the final boss of the greenhouse, a giant bird, using the girl dressed as a flower as bait and holding a giant apple, having to wait to lure the bird and allow Loken to destroy it. The girl is annoyed by so much humiliation, thinking her feminine charms don't work on the protagonist, which only motivates her more to try to seduce him and make him her loyal servant. Meanwhile, the bird spots the food and heads straight for it. Jaren, tired, wonders when the damn bird will arrive until it finally lands behind her. Jaren turns to see the imposing giant bird from which she escapes crying, remembering that the protagonist told her the bird wouldn't follow her, but the fruit. The girl continues with the mission to attract it, waiting for Loken to come, but she is still chased by the bird, with no sign of the protagonist. Her desperation makes her shout for Loken, who from atop a tree, with some good popcorn, enjoys the show, mocking how the girl who thought she was the queen bee runs, while Jaren runs desperately. She ends up on the ground, with the bird stopping behind her about to exterminate her, but this was not true because all this time. To exterminate her, but this was not true since all this time. The bird was really only after the fruit, which it can finally eat comfortably. Loken, from the top of the tree, laughs out loud, mocking the expression of the queen bee, considering her a novice who has never mated, while the giant bird devours the fruit. Loken thinks this is enough abuse and that he will go to help, hoping the girl has learned her lesson and is no longer so selfish. Meanwhile, Yeren, frustrated and angry, thinks about how she was used as bait by a supposed savior, who never showed up, so enraged she throws a stone at the bird. Loken sees it, knowing that if she attacks, the bird will respond. The bird barely feels the hit, but still gets annoyed, the protagonist getting wild. From above, he sees how the girl is brutally attacked, incredulous, since he never thought she would do something so reckless. Loken is still undecided, knowing that if he does nothing, Jerry probably won't survive. The girl now agonizes on the ground, calling Loken with her last breath, who finally decides to intervene, wondering, since when the bird has softened so much. With a murderous look, he goes straight to attack the unconscious little flower, not noticing that from the sky. Loken approaches, giving a strong blow to the bird's back. But the bird doesn't fall, nor does Loken, who clings to its back to avoid falling, while the bird tries to shake him off, moving from side to side. This leaves Loken very annoyed and dirty, determined not to let go, until he realizes they are heading straight for a tree. The protagonist quickly releases his aura, entering a blood-marked transformation, and decides to avoid reaching there, jumping and using a bomber, which causes a big explosion that wakes Yeren. The bird dives down, injured, while its eyes almost pop out of their sockets, seeing that from above an angry Loken holds his gigantic axe ready to deliver a fatal blow. The bird reacts, launching an attack, which Loken watches with joy, ready to test his strength. He surpasses any defense of the bird, is split in two before the admiring gaze of the little flower, who feels her heart beating strongly, awakening the desire to be as strong as the protagonist. Loken remains somewhat energetic after the fight, determined to go for his reward, a large bird egg that he must keep until it hatches, and in this way tame it and obtain the first aerial transport along with his entry to the sky. But for now, he must look for the flower girl, whom he searches for everywhere, hoping she is not dead. However, she is not there. He only finds a letter. It tells him that from now on, he will fight his own battles. Loken. He thinks she is crazy or not as foolish as he thought, considering that the queen bee's rehabilitation has ended, and now he can continue with his hunting mission. And so, Loken returns to Crossroad to perform maintenance before his new mission. First, he heads to the dwarves' forge, where the blacksmith gives him a new armor that, although not the best for Loken, is more than excellent with good stats and effects. And he also receives gloves with the best possible defense and improvements in agility and endurance, plus the effect of gaining more attacks and defense for each consecutive kill. His gear becomes effective against large groups. Thus, he prepares for his next objective, the old man who assigns him the bone reflection mission, where he must investigate not only the herbs that revive flesh, but also the bones, for which he needs to obtain special material. His next destination is the imposing and eerie city of the undead, where he must look for Lich, an eccentric mage who defeated death, and who can resurrect no matter how many times he is killed. He is famous for having his lair in the cradle of death within the city, a feared place, even for level 190 players. Due to the difficulty of entry, Loken decides to stalk the surroundings, knowing it will not be easy, as he will have to face at least 50 undead guards ranging between levels 150 and 190, who can resurrect. Although his team is good, facing them would be a problem. So he has another plan. The protagonist starts his live stream from the camp, which sparks great interest among the players, including the same orcs he once defeated. Loken looks imposing at the city entrance and throws down a new challenge. He will give his enhanced sword to whoever manages to draw it from the rock where he has placed it. Many don't believe him, but most fall into the trap and begin arriving in hordes to try to claim the prize. Meanwhile, a large orc army decides not only to go for the sword, but also for Loken, who smiles seeing how they took the bait. Later, when he sees many people gathered, he launches a bomber. With this, he wants to test the new power boost effect of his armor, enjoying the spectacle. Meanwhile, the orcs don't stay still and plan to keep attacking him, which makes Loken happy. Starting his attack, first, he lets out a great roar, then rushes at full speed through the group of enemies, cutting and slicing everything in his path. Meanwhile, a small goblin sneaks away from the fight to try to get behind him. Just when he was confident he had fooled everyone, Loken returns from above like lightning. We finish off the little green man. After the massacre, the attack and armor stats are at 200%, so he decides to move to Phase 2, and an orc curses as he barely manages to stand. Loken launches a bomber, although it's not aimed at the orc, but at the city, activating a magic seal that releases the city's guardian undead legion. The orc grows confident, seeing them, and thinks Loken stands no chance, but he is waiting for them. And when they are close enough, he raises his hands and calls forth a great force of electricity, which is released in the form of a giant beam that sweeps away the undead. The orc is left incredulous in front of a Loken who promises his audience that the fight is just beginning. Then the undead rise and go against Loken, who waits for them, predicting their movements, which were simple since he knew the artificial intelligence well. Finally, he delivers a strong blow that takes down one of them, thus beginning his counterattack, promising the weak undead that he will eradicate them once and for all. Running across the battlefield, he finishes off each of the undead with precise cuts while having fun, until only those in front of the huge city remain, and nearby is also the orc who survived, who summons more guards to contain him. Loken knows it is useless, jumping to fall like lightning, destroying everything in his path, leaving only him and the orc, who is very scared. Loken approaches him, while the orc keeps calling the guards, but Loken had already finished off 50 of them, so they will take a while to come back to life. Now only one loose end remains. The orc is trapped, only able to scream. Later, Loken walks alone along the desolate path to retrieve his sword, which no one can pull from the rock, knowing that there is still no one who can do it. Or maybe thinking like that about someone who would compare to him, none other than Dean himself, waiting to find him soon to finish him off. Then, Loken walks through a field of beautiful and vibrant red flowers, the only place with life in the village and precisely the entrance to the Lich's laboratory. Now that it is free, he can enter easily, preparing to go inside. He cuts his arms slightly to spill blood on one of the roses. This activates a mechanism that opens a gigantic door in the ground, and so he enters a gloomy and well-lit passage, assuming the lanterns are something special, but for now he ignores that, focusing only on searching for the materials for the mission. Reaching a closed door that seems to be the laboratory of the Lich, who precisely appears speaking to Loken, warning him that if he is there, it will only end as a human sacrifice, to which Loken responds with a bomber. It seems like he finishes him off to then deliver the final blow at full speed, but when he is about to give the finishing strike, an energy field stops him. In disbelief, Loken is thrown to the ground with full force, left badly injured and bleeding. This pleases the skeleton, who asks him what it feels like to be under a magical engineering field. Meanwhile, the Lich resurrects some servants to finish off a tired Loken, who can't even get up, thinking about how he had underestimated his rival, whom he thought he would just kick a few times and eradicate. But now, as the army approaches, the atmosphere is covered in a red aura, and the protagonist's eyes turn white, ready for a furious attack. Loken continues, destroying several light orbs that illuminate the dungeon, which terrifies the Lich, who believes the protagonist is trying to escape like a coward. However, Loken keeps doing his thing, smashing the orbs, since he knows very well that one of them is actually the life vessel of the skeletal mage. If he destroys it, he will end the Lich with no chance of resurrection, so he continues destroying more orbs, although he doesn't find the right one. Without any other option, he moves forward determined to destroy them all, until he finds the correct one. The mage, increasingly trembling, tries to get Lokan's attention, picking up a large stone shield, from which powerful purple flashes begin to emerge. While Lokan runs, he sees out of the corner of his eye that the lich is preparing to attack, generating large rock spears that form all over the cavern and move like tentacles. Lokan switches two hand axes, constantly dodging the tentacle strikes that try to impale him. Observing the attack patterns, he keeps dodging until he finally finds a moment of peace, visualizing his target and throwing the axes using Bomber, destroying 3 orbs at once. The mage's tentacles cannot stop the attack. They try to surround Lokan, the one who jumps between them to reach another orb, attacking it with all his strength. The blow bounces back, surprising him with its hardness. This makes him suppose that he has finally found the lich's vessel. Determined to destroy it, he prepares to launch another bomber, but this one is barely intercepted by one of the lich's tentacles. Furious, the lich promises he will not let Lokan leave there alive. Using his tentacles, he grabs the vessel and places it in the center of his dead body, regaining all his energy and resurrecting as the level 180 mage Cylonian. The new enemy seems to feel imposing and confident, until Lokan, with a single move, appears behind him, lowering his morale. Lokan tells him he never thought about fighting against his lich form because it was boring and a waste of time. The enraged mage lunges at him, using the Dark Destruction Strike. However, Lokan does not even flinch and with just one move pierces him, then shatters the orb, completely finishing him off, while reaffirming that it was very boring. After the explosion and leveling up, and with no chances of resurrection, it is time to enjoy the rewards. Lokan obtains the Bone Contemplation research material, completing the mission. However, now his visit focuses on some extra rewards. Finding just skill books. Excited, he starts searching through them, but only finds trash that he quickly discards. Finally, he finds something interesting. A skill book called Third Hand. This book grants the ability to create a new hand made of mana, or as many as he wants, as long as he has enough mana and concentration. It is a skill that could be very useful, although he does not know how to use it, so he decides to keep it. Meanwhile, a new enemy approaches, stealthily to attack him, but at the last moment, Lokan stops him, truly happy, since he was expecting him. Immediately after, he shatters the skeleton's skull while mocking him, but suddenly, a gigantic horde of undead arrives. This only amuses Lokan. Who thinks they're going to look for their undead friend? But now they should call him the well-dead. The entire army attacks Logan, who advances determined to prove his strength, finishing off skeleton after skeleton, until he decides to jump and take out several with a single strike. However, those skeletons will keep appearing constantly due to the remnants of the death essence from the orb that contain the lich's power. This should be a clear sign to run for the newbies. But for Lokan, it is a great experience point farm, leveling up higher and higher and improving his stats. With every enemy he eliminates, excited he enjoys the hunt, until in the end only he remains triumphant over the piles of bones. With enough points, he decides it is time to leave the dungeon and head to the next target, the undead village. In the village, a small frightened orc, as the city was left devastated, assuming it was Logan's doing in his live stream. Thankful not to have been there. While walking through the area, he encounters the orc he thought had been eliminated by Lokan. This one explains that once he ran out of opponents, he cut the stream and left without any idea why. The smaller orc searches online for live, finding a notification, indicating that Lokan is streaming again under a new name. For the broadcast, the invasion of the land of the undead. The whole city goes on alert, determined to eliminate him. The guards, skeletons that arrive, are met by Lokan's swift cuts, while the orcs arrive only to watch how Lokan easily finishes off the skeletons. One of them accuses him of hacking. This annoys him and lowers his morale, reminding him of the problems from the previous city, but at the same time also motivates him to tell everyone that, whether they trust him or not, he can take down the entire city alone. And Logan explains the capture game mode, according to the protagonist. It is when you expel hostiles or eliminate all enemies from a camp, taking control of it. This indicates a large-scale battle where users can keep regenerating, bringing 50 guards for each player who invades. This only works if done in a group at the clan level, something that orcs know. However, Loken is not interested in forming a clan, since he wants the rewards for himself, disarming and slicing an orc. And then he finds himself surrounded by more enemies, who launch an attack while Loken reflects that the overwhelming strength difference against the camp is just a thought, shredding all his rivals with a great spinning attack. This is watched by a small troll, hiding in an alley, terrified to see how their strongest warriors have been defeated. Only half of the users remain, and hours are missing before the guards return, which means they are being conquered by a single player. Loken appears in front of the troll, cheerful and offering him a gift for guessing the situation. Thus, the streets, wells, and corners of the city witness the protagonist's bloody massacre, leaving a scene of desolation that begins to be illuminated by daylight. The capture of the city is confirmed, preventing users belonging to the camp from respawning there for at least 3 hours. And a towering Loken receives the notification that, being alone in the camp and conquering it by himself, he is granted the title of Tyrant, which will increase his stats by up to 15% in hostile fields or against hostile NPCs. Additionally, his strength increases by 50% against large groups of enemies. With this, and a great public reaction to his feat, Loken knows he can make a lot of money from his YouTube channel with these battles. But for now, his goal is to rest before going for the main mission. Just when a user warns him to be careful ahead, Loken doesn't understand until a powerful figure arrives at full speed and hits him directly in the stomach with a large stone hammer, sending him flying throughout the city and crashing into a crazy wall. He spits blood and looks confused. Since there shouldn't be any rivals left, he just sees a figure approaching, mentioning that he's been waiting for this day to finish him off. For Taylor, who must be crying in heaven, this is how level 200, Captain of the Guard Yaris, appears. Loken didn't expect him to show up there, thinking of fleeing, but his pride stops him from doing so during the live stream. Besides it being a fight where he wouldn't gain anything and has everything to lose, especially since after just one blow, he's been left so injured. He is aware that the monster in front of him is stronger than he is. However, remembering Odin, he realizes he needs an even higher level to be the predator. Standing seriously before a Yaris who sees him as a noisy guy, Loken can't hold back and asks if by annihilating him, he will be the strongest in the place, which annoys the chief, who thinks he's mocking him. However, Yaris directly replies yes. If he kills him, he will be the strongest of all in the place, even reaching the other continent, giving his word as commander. This immediately motivates the protagonist, who tells him to step up to the guard. The protagonist stands up. Paraphrasing, there's no need to unleash useless battles, and bravery and stupidity are different. Understanding this very well, but not comprehending why he decided to move. Determined to fight, he switches his gear to critical damage, since his rival uses a very heavy hammer that in his hands seems light, so he can't afford medium defense. Activating his helmet, he prepares for battle. The rivals step firmly, exchanging glances on the battlefield. Their mere presence raises clouds of dust, and the intense confrontation surprises everyone watching the stream. They don't see many chances for Loken, no matter how strong he is. The sun shines before a determined Loken and a confident Yaris. Both unleash their power, preparing to attack. They launch at each other. Halfway through, the protagonist decides to activate Berserker. Ready for impact, both clash their weapons, facing each other with big smiles on their faces. The warriors keep clashing their weapons at close range, causing havoc in the city. Yaris points out to Loken that he is stained with blood, while he rubs it off confidently. With a Herculean appearance, he offers to bathe him in red. Also, the power battle continues, with so many powerful blows that, in one of them, both lose their weapons. So they decide to fight with bare fists. The protagonist tries to dodge the commander's strong punches, but ends up being sent flying by a punch that damages his helmet, barely staying on his feet. After that hit, he sees how Yarrow launches a tremendous kick that Loken barely manages to block. Causing destruction around him, Loken throws some bands from his hands, and Yaris takes advantage to land a direct hit on his jaw. Just at that moment, Loken uses the bands to return, taking advantage of the momentum from the hit. And with a strong headbutt followed by a kick, sending the commander flying straight into a building. Without giving him a break, Loken rushes at full speed, activating his axe to deliver the final blow, a cut so powerful it pierces all through Yaris' shoulder, ending in an explosion. But from the rubble, Yaris emerges still alive, seeing how his arm is almost broken. With this, Loken realizes he can defeat him. At that moment, the city guard erupts, coming to assist their chief. He protests this as a real problem, thinking it might not be much if others join, but Yaris, while his face glows with a soft purple hue, cheerfully tells them not to interfere, standing up and asking Loken if he knew Malcolm. This is because Yaris is feeling the same as when he faced the elf, Malcolm being the only man he has recognized as strong so far, and now he recognizes Loken as he enters a transformation, releasing his true form. And so, amid huge flashes that alter the terrain, Jillian Yaris is revealed. The commander of Ashton's guard, and now, as a fearsome demon, he asks the protagonist to tell him his name. Loken smiles upon hearing this and identifies himself as the only true berserker. The commander promises that the protagonist will be remembered. He was about to mock him, but in a second, Yaris disappears from his sight. Loken tries to find him, but Yaris reappears carrying an entire house and throws it at him. Loken finds no way to dodge the attack, so he makes a huge effort, catching it and holding it, while Yaris shatters it with a kick from above, until it explodes directly in the next panel. Among the rubble, he moves at full speed, straight toward Lockhart, who can barely dodge. As his vision becomes blurry, barely standing and confused, Logan begins to remember how Din belittled him for being so weak that he wasn't even able to finish him personally, suffering humiliation in front of all of Ragnarok. This enrages him so much that he activates his battle cry. Immediately, he charges at the commander, who blocks his attack. The commander plants his feet firmly on the ground and, smiling, recognizes Loken as a true berserker, but Loken, driven by fury, keeps attacking with everything he has. Yaris quickly takes control, destroying his weapon with just one move, and confidently advances, launching a combined attack called Mount, crushing the protagonist and then starting to hit him hard in the face. Loken begins unlocking memories of his past life with the beating he's receiving, completely powerless, gasping for air on the ground while taking another strong hit to the face. His memories of the humiliations suffered in Ragnarok become increasingly blurry. With the rain falling, they distort, while Yaris increases the strength of his massacre. They boast about the power difference, and we see Loki completely beaten on the ground, with a face full of sadness and despair, raising his arm, longing to reach Odin and Yaris, wanting to lessen the power gap, but never asking for mercy or surrendering. He pulls out a hand axe in front of Yaris' face, activating the bomber, causing a bright flash and an explosion. Yaris is sent flying, hurting his arms with which he blocked the explosion, thinking that the protagonist is crazy trying to self-destruct. Then he sees how Loken, with everything he has, chases him, with eyes full of fury, with a single goal, to finish him off. This pleases the commander, who recognizes him as the best. Planting his feet on the ground, Yaris says he will give him a touch worthy of him, gathering his power in his hand and generating a huge seal full of fists called the Destructor Fist. Loken does not fall behind, activating his gigantic axe to launch his final attack, the killing blow. Both shout, preparing for the clash. Yaris' fists collide with Loken's gigantic axe, exploding in a great shockwave. The clash continues until everything ends with the terrain destroyed. The Candelaro warriors stand back to back. The commander congratulates the protagonist on the hit, just before his body gives out, falling split in two. With this, the transmission ends, and a group that was watching the broadcast cannot believe what just happened. There is Godin, who asks his assistant Zeus what the name of that berserker was. End of season. Well, folks, if you liked it and were entertained by this manga, please give a little like. It helps me a lot. Leave a nice comment. And for you who have already watched, like 4 of my videos and haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Help me bring more mangas of the same quality. And folks, remember that today, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, we are doing the voting on which manga to choose on Instagram. And again, I thank you so much for supporting me. I love you all a lot.